tail. The problem is that when you're in the middle of it, it never feels very easy. So today, the Chinese factories reopen, as we've been hearing. We'll see whether they go back to production. We'll see what that does in terms of delivery of parts through the global supply chains around the world. All of this is really absolutely critical, and we've got to watch it really very carefully. But the sense is that we started the year with optimism about a trade deal. We started with optimism about Brexit. Markets were having quite a good January before this unexpected event came up, and therefore the temptation is to buy the dip.
The non-farm payroll number on Friday had a few people scratching their head just because of that jump in the unemployment number. But overall, it seemed like a remarkably strong number that just reinforces that idea of momentum and the desire to own risk at this point.
Well, the consumer remains confident in many parts of the world because they're getting jobs. All right? Now, the finer points of the payroll analysis was in the low-quality jobs, the 25 to 34-year-olds are losing their jobs, that sort of thing. But on balance, if you make 200,000 odd jobs in a month, new ones, that's good for confidence, and it shows that companies, industry, is prepared to take a chance and to invest for what it sees as a better year. So I think that's great. Now, risk on, risk off, but risk on, which could mean owning equities, you still can't get away from the fact that the companies are delivering good profits, they're paying dividends, and you can get a yield of 2% from a portfolio of shares around the world.
Where do you think the US is going? Because I guess for us, second half of last year, we were getting quite worried about leverage, and the trade war seemed to be taking a real bite out of the economy. But then you had the truce. I guess, as you say, there's a lot of optimism on the consumer side, and I guess Trump looks quite strong, and there seems to be a sense that across the country as a whole that's quite positive for consumers. Do you think once we get coronavirus out of the way, we're past the worst in America, or are we going to be seeing growth reaccelerate?
Well, I'd like to think we are going to be able to say we're past the worst for coronavirus, and I think it's probably still too early to say that. But I think, yes, I think the phase one truce for the trade war is a political move. It's good news. It's election year. And I think that, generally speaking, the US economy will deliver some decent growth. And if that's the case, the rest of the world can take notice of that.
Okay.
There was some reporting that maybe we've got a bubble in stocks on Wall Street, because if you look at the reaction we saw last week, very strong moves to the upside and all these unknowns still around coronavirus. Mohammed Al-Arian was reporting or making commentary over the weekend that maybe it's not going to be a V-shaped recovery, it'll be a U or it could be an L. And in that context, you've got to say that Wall Street has overreacted. It's been overly positive around coronavirus. Do you think we are witnessing a bit of a bubble if you take a look at that market reaction?
Well, I think you've got straight to it. I think the heart of the matter is that this is either a mid-cycle correction, a growth slowdown, which we've been with for a while now, and it's going to be fine, in which case we'll come back to ratings, but in which case that's good news, or this is the end of the cycle and coronavirus will tip us over the edge into a slowdown, a proper slowdown.
But it becomes that black swan event for markets, is what you're saying?
It's the sort of thing that isn't in the numbers and now is going into the numbers. People are downgrading now, and that's going to take a while to feed through the system. But I think back to is there a bubble in US stocks? I think, when I look at the results that have been coming through this month, the last few weeks, they're great. The growth companies may be on multiples in the mid-20s, but they're also growing in the mid-20s. And if inflation is low, interest rates aren't going up, that's not a bad deal.
That's interesting. You say they're great. Some companies and some industries seem to be struggling still to improve the top line. Obviously, a lot of businesses have been very aggressive about managing costs and working on getting the bottom line healthier. But are we at a point here where you think aggregate demand is re-emerging, that actually we may have come through a cycle and there's the potential here for re-acceleration?
I think what it is I think we should all be suspicious about the financial engineers, and the evidence is gathering that we are collectively less willing to finance the financial engineers to carry on losing money. So that's to put that to one side. But I think it's really not a matter of aggregate demand. I think it's the winners versus the losers. The winning companies, which one might call growth, are just taking profit, revenue, markets away from the losers, and the losers are cheaper and they're getting cheaper. So it's really difficult to make the case as many do, I think, to make the case to switch from what I regard as growth in a low-growth world into value in a low-growth world, which requires some greater optimism about the future than I can muster at the moment.
Talking about optimism, how do you think the US election plays into this? I mean, this corporate improvement partly is around, though, the trade truce. Do you think the outcome of the US election is going to be instrumental in where we end up with the US next year?
Well, it does depend who's in charge. So my view is that phase one of the trade deal is the end of the subject. Yep. I don't think it's coming back anytime soon. But I think when you look at the way in which US politics is going, you know, the hanging Chad has been replaced by the failing app. You know, it's hard to be rational about what's going on there. But I think business as a whole is taking the view that a pro-business administration will be back in charge this November. And if that proves not to be the case, I think that's not in the price.
The hanging Chad, you're dating us all there. What was that, 2000?
Yeah.
Bush, wasn't it?
Yes,
Bush.
yeah, it was.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
Yep.
Bush versus Gore.
Gosh.
The world would have been different, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it just? Karen, let's get back to you.
Thank you very much for that, Jeff. I've got a couple of stocks to show you on this market open around Ireland and the political fallout. The Nationalist Party Sinn Féin looks set to be part of an Irish government for the first time, having won the highest percentage of first preference votes in the general election. Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou McDonald has described the vote as a revolution in the ballot box. However, the exact makeup of the next Irish government is unclear, with 82 seats yet to be declared. And this is a mix of Irish-focused stocks, as you can see. Fairly mixed reaction. Smurfit Kappa trading higher. Greencore also bouncing. Ousted Credit Suisse CEO Tidjane Thiam is set to deliver his company's quarterly and full-year earnings for the last time this Thursday. The Swiss bank's board decided to end Thiam's 5-year tenure after a 4-month investigation into a spying scandal that caused major reputational damage to one of Europe's major lenders. A second investigation over similar charges is currently underway by Swiss regulator FINMA. Thomas Gottstein, the head of the company's local business, will succeed Thiam. Jeff.
Thanks very much indeed, Karen. Coming up, the record-breaking streak continues as the US jobs report beats expectations. We talked a bit about non-farm payrolls. We'll break down the numbers when we come back.
Technology only matters if it makes a difference in the guest experience.
Fort Knox with John Fort. Subscribe to the podcast now.
My name is Melissa, and I am a new mother. So my husband and I had talked about getting life insurance with the expansion of our family. The folks at Policy Genius were very helpful, and we were able to apply together. By choosing Policy Genius, we were able to compare many different policies in a very short amount of time. In addition, we were able to get all of our questions answered. They were able to kind of navigate me to the right policy. My husband and I feel very much at ease now that we know that our family is taken care of.
Hi, I'm Joan London. Today's senior living communities have never been better, and nobody understands your options like the advisors at A Place for Mom. A Place for Mom is a free service to help you find a place that fits your parents' budget, needs, and personalities. Call today. A Place for Mom. You know your family. We know senior living. Together, we'll make the right choice.
Call A Place for Mom to get your free ebook on financing senior care. Call 1-800-536-7580.
Life Room by Four Seasons, where outdoor living meets future technology. No matter your style or budget, Four Seasons has got you covered. Simple shade from the sun? Covered. Outdoor dining and style? Covered. Need additional living space? Oh yeah, that too. Call today and arrange your free design consultation. Four Seasons, we've got you covered.
The American spirit, inherently competitive, always driven with a hunger, ambition, and an appetite to succeed. The pursuit of prosperity can be unpredictable and thrilling. From breakthroughs to breakdowns, the launches and the crashes. Perseverance is paramount. Knowledge essential.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC.
That's what drives us. It's in our DNA to provide the information you need wherever you are to propel your dreams forward.
The U.S. economy added 225,000 jobs in January. That was well above Wall Street estimates. The unemployment rate ticked higher to 3.6%, in part because the labor force participation rate rose to its highest level since 2013. Average hourly earnings rose 3.1% year on year, also surpassing expectations. Steve Leisman takes a closer look at the challenges the job market still faces, including, of course, coronavirus.
A very strong January jobs report that blew past Wall Street expectations, with the only negative being how long can it last with the challenges the U.S. economy faces ahead. Still, nearly all of the commentary from the street has been relatively upbeat. BMO writing that, quote, American companies kicked off the new year in high style, and Capital Economics looked at the report and said the economy has more momentum than we previously believed. Non-farm payrolls grew by 225,000 against a January estimate of 158,000. Average hourly wages up 0.2%, better than last month, but still relatively muted. The unemployment rate ticked up to 3.6%, but that's because more people came into the workforce. The labor force participation came in at 63.4%. Healthcare and education jobs rose by 72,000. Construction was up by 44,000, but that could have been helped by very warm January weather, as well as helping leisure and hospitality, which grew by 36,000. Transportation and warehousing and professional business services up 28 and 21,000, respectively. Jobs were, however, lost in manufacturing, and that could be related to the ongoing trade wars or Boeing's shutdown of the 737 MAX production. And retail also saw declines, with big drops in hiring at department stores. Economists see the report, however, as confirmation for the Fed to keep rates on hold. Oxford writing, this report should comfort the Fed that further policy accommodation is unnecessary. And the economist at Breen wrote, this report will embolden the Fed to let the labor market run hot. That's because there may be hidden slack in the economy, as you saw from the moderate wage gains and the pickup in participation. The question for the months ahead, how the job market withstands the Boeing shutdown, continued weakness overseas, and the fallout from the coronavirus, particularly from China. The strong January jobs report, though, tells us the labor market's in a strong position to withstand those challenges. Steve Leisman, CNBC Business News.
David, let's pick up with you on that, because I think Steve Leisman makes a very interesting point there about where the Fed strategy now goes. If the economy continues to generate these kind of numbers, why is the market still bought into the idea of another Fed rate cut this year? I mean, the implied likelihood of that is still relatively high. I think 75% likelihood is what I last saw. Clearly, they don't need a rate cut if they're adding jobs at this pace.
Far be it from me to criticise the Fed, but the policy at the moment is a little bit on the confused side. I think the valid point they're making is that they're watching the numbers and they're ready to act. So if growth does slow down, then they can do something about it. They have the ability to do that. And against that, I think the market is also slightly leaning towards the presidential tweets and thinking that they might just do it to avoid being too roundly criticised in election year by the president. And that combination gives you that percentage of expecting a further cut. But as you're right, I don't think it's that particularly necessary because the US economy is functioning reasonably well.
That's why I wanted to ask about the jawboning from Trump. I mean, do you think that that's effective for him? Do you think he's actually capable of, because in the past we've always felt that the Fed very, very reluctant to in fact, interventions from the administration almost put the Fed on hold? Doesn't seem to be the case this time around.
It doesn't, and I think it's the persistence of the tweeting about policy and how useless the Fed has been and how far behind the curve. I think it must get you after a while. These people are only human. And because they don't have that framework that was in place with Bernanke and Yellen quite as clearly articulated, they're more susceptible, or it is more susceptible to change.
Is Trump going to have a stronger stock market going into the election no matter what? Because if you have coronavirus, the impact is slowing down the economy, then you get stimulus from the Fed. If you don't have it, then you've got a market in recovery. So either way, he wins with a firmer stock market.
I think he's got something to blame. So I'm not convinced that he can actually make water flow uphill, right. Much as he thinks he can. But I think he now has a decent excuse. The economy is either fine, so it's the economy stupid, that's my pitch, or it tips over, in which case it's not my fault, but I'm doing my best for America. So I could see it going either way. And I think for us to invest on the basis that it is presidential year and that's the only reason to invest, because historically it's been a good thing to do, I think will be a mistake.
I mean, the other thing, of course, is that quite a bit of the growth that we've had under Trump has been driven through fiscal policy. So he's been very aggressive about stimulating the economy through tax reductions. We've got his draft budget, which obviously won't get passed. I think that's coming out today. And it's going to be, again, another significant... He will be arguing for another significant fiscal boost for the economy.
Let's have a quick look at some of these comments that are coming out of Ireland this hour. Reuters reporting, Sinn Féin leader MacDonald says, quote, "Of course we'll speak to the leaders of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael about the formation of a new government." She says her first priority is to try to form a left-wing government with like-minded parties. So I think we're getting an early look here at a little bit of muscle flexing on the back of what appears to be a surprisingly strong result from Sinn Féin in the Irish election, although we'll probably have to wait till end of Tuesday to know exactly what the exact position of the parties is. Do you have any strong views on the Irish stock market or the Irish government, David, before we let you go?
I think one aside, I think rather than a strong view not to answer your question, is that I think that it is interesting that the EU, the UK, is become a different place, and I think the EU budget negotiations are going to be fascinating. Those who presented the case for the way the structure works are going to end up being it's all going to be paid for by the Germans, and I can't imagine that the Bundestag and the German voters are going to be particularly happy about this. And I think the peripheral economies, those that are not well placed, that have benefited from the EU largesse, are going to find life a bit colder.
David, pleasure having you in. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. David Miller, Investment Director at Quilter Cheviot. Karen.
Jeff, just going to take you back to the war. The Italian conglomerate Exor has confirmed it is in talks with the French insurance company Covéa over the sale of its reinsurer, Partner Re. Now, multiple reports have suggested the deal could be worth $9 billion. Shares in the insurance unit SCOR, where Covéa is the top shareholder, have fallen on the back of the news, and here's how some of the stocks play out in morning trade today. Coming up on the show, we're live in Dublin as Sinn Féin surges in the Irish election count, upending almost 100 years of centre-right politics.
Right now on CNBC Make It. When it comes to video games, this designer is making a killing.
So I was really worried about, will I have a career?
How Brendan Green went from welfare to warrior in $1 billion business on CNBCMakeIt.com.
Do you worry about going to the dentist? After all, a visit to the dentist can easily cost $2,000 or more. Well, relax. The Carefree Dental Card is now available in your area. Call now and we'll send your actual card at no cost today. With the Carefree Dental Card, you go to the dentist whenever you need and you instantly pay a lot less. Activate your card and you can start using it immediately. From exams and cleanings to more expensive procedures like crowns, dentures, even braces, they're all included with the Carefree Dental Card. Say you go to the dentist today without any card and your bill is, ouch. Wait a minute, let's try that again. You go to the dentist today and show your Carefree Dental Card, you save $525. The Carefree Dental Card is just $15.95 a month. So call now and make going to the dentist carefree.
Call 1-800-997-2117 to receive your free Carefree Dental Card information kit. Call 1-800-997-2117 now.
Room by Four Seasons, where outdoor living meets future technology. No matter your style or budget, Four Seasons has got you covered. Simple shade from the sun? Covered. Outdoor dining and style? Covered. Need additional living space? Oh yeah, that too. Call today and arrange your free design consultation. Four Seasons, we've got you covered.
There are so many new sources of data available to investors. Satellite imagery might tell you about inventory management and how things are moving around the world. One area of real interest is the cloud, when you can use it for large-scale transaction processing. Machine intelligence can help us to identify market manipulation, insider trading, and other sources of fraud in the markets. You're going to see fintech creating more global markets, more global transactions, and less friction in the system. This is the future of business. I watch CNBC.
Anytime, any place. Watch CNBC Primetime live.
Yeah, baby!
Catch up on demand on the all-new CNBC app.
There's unbelievable technology here.
Easier than ever to find the shows you're looking for. Discover new ones.
This is amazing. Wow.
Go behind the scenes.
That's why I watch CNBC.
Plus, access to CNBC podcasts. Right now, 10-minute free preview every day. Now available in the App Store.
China tries to go back to work as a number of major factories reopen for business, but Sunday marks the worst day in the coronavirus outbreak so far, with 97 more fatalities taking the death toll to over 900 people. Europe follows Asian equities broadly lower, led down by travel and leisure stocks, as the UK says the epidemic constitutes a serious and imminent public health threat. 15,000 jobs are on the line at Daimler as the luxury car company reportedly looks to cut more costs in a move that could save the group 1.4 billion euros by 2022. And history in the making, South Korean film Parasite becomes the first ever foreign language film to win Best Picture at the Oscars, while war epic 1917 is the other big winner. Markets here in Europe have been trading for half an hour so far, and it's a weak trading day that is transpiring. Now, that handover from Wall Street Friday session also showed some of that energy, some of that enthusiasm for risk on has been sapped at this point, and lots of questions around coronavirus still in markets today as factories try and return to work in China at this point. Some have extended the break, but some are trying to resume operations. Already reports around supply chains being disrupted in other countries as a result of not receiving components from some of these Chinese factories. So we're still weighing up what is taking place on the ground in the mainland market. Also, the level of infections. 40,000 people have contracted the coronavirus, and more than 900 people are also dead at this point. And investors are yet to hear peak levels for the virus. So enormous amount of unknowns still about what transpires over the course of this year. With that context in mind, stocks are just setting back. We're traveling down by about 1/3% here in Europe today, following a little bit of Reading Friday session. So just reversing course after what was a stunning trade earlier last week. And over the course of the week, we saw gains of about 4% for the likes of the DAX, one of the strongest trades in Europe. In terms of sectors, a couple of patches of green now. Construction material, autos just turning positive. Construction material and telecoms. I would just point out with basic resources, autos, I should say. In the autos segment, we've had some news out from Daimler around cost cutting. Reports that there will be 15,000 jobs shed, and that is supporting that stock and the sector today. Weak patches, though, travel and leisure, and this is directly related to the coronavirus. Also, oil and gas. We saw over the course of last week another setback for what was taking place in that particular sector. Very weak performance as we saw 5 straight negative weeks for WTI and Brent. Let's get into the stocks. A couple of big movers at the start. NMC Health has been one that's been constantly ticking around on the market open. We've got Exor. We've been talking about that stock a little bit this morning. Julius Baer also in focus today. A bounce of 2.2%. We've got Centrica in the utility space reversing, Ryanair and the travel leisure space. One stock weighing on the overall basket of stocks. And you can see other big names in Nesta. 2.2% down there. That's the oil space, as you see the impact from coronavirus still. Jeff.
Karen, Thank you very much. Extraordinary flashes crossing the desk right now. For anybody focused on Germany and the government and the political developments happening in Germany right now, this would be extraordinary. The reports suggest that AKK, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, who was the heir apparent to Chancellor Merkel, will not run for the Chancellor. Reuters is quoting party sources. The reports go on to say that Merkel wants Kramp-Karrenbauer to remain a minister, but that AKK will organise the procedure for electing a Conservative Chancellor candidate in the summer. I'm not quite sure what the catalyst for this may have been, or why at this point AKK, as she is known, may have decided to step back from that role as Chancellor. But hopefully Annette in Frankfurt can give us some guidance. Annette, you're probably reading these as we are, but no doubt your sourcing and sources are better informed than I am. So what's going on?
Well, actually, it is just the end of a more or less longer process that AKK now is giving up, according to those reports, her aspiration to be the next chancellor. And also, according to Bild Zeitung, she'll give away her job as party leader. Well, we had an opinion poll just yesterday. 72% of those who were asked thought that she's the wrong person in that job. And there's a whole sort of sequence of mishaps, like PR disasters, or also like really wrong decisions. And she has not proven to be a very sort of powerful politician. She has no control over her own party, and that was shown by a recent event in that federal state of Thuringia, as you call it in English. The CDU should have never opted to back an AfD or to go into some sort of a compromise coalition with the AfD. That was the party mantra. And AKK apparently didn't have any grip on her own party in that federal state. Then Angela Merkel intervened, so in a way she lost her face as well in the public, because Angela Merkel sort of replaced her in the public discourse by saying this person in charge of those Eastern German affairs have to go, and this was a wrong decision to back the FDP candidate in Thuringia together with the AfD. So it was a whole, it was just the end of a long process that AKK has to go and will never be the next chancellor, because she's just not up for the job. The big question is what's going to happen next, and who actually might be then the next candidate for chancellor. I guess Friedrich Merz again is in the running. This is the the businessman who sort of sharply lost against AKK at that party convention some 1 year and a bit ago in December in 2018. So the question is, who is going to be next? It could be Laschet, who he has an internal profile, but like in international affairs, he has no profile, or Friedrich Merz, or perhaps someone completely different. Bottom line is the political landscape in Germany seems to move as well. After that Thuringia election mishap, we have opinion polls also showing that, for example, the Liberal Party is a party which was before standing at roughly 10% in the public opinion polls, now is at 5%. And also, interestingly, the Alternative for Germany, the right-wing populist party, is losing appeal with voters after that Thuringia election. How you want to call it, catastrophe in a way. So we're going to see how that unfolds in the coming weeks. But one thing is sure, it will be interesting to see who is going to replace Angela Merkel eventually. With that, back to you.
Thank you very much, Lynette. We've got Robin here too, weighing up the developments. Piecing this together, what do you make of this news around AKK?
Well, I guess for me, the really interesting thing is how this plays into the upcoming election cycle. So look, the coalition already looks really shaky. So there's been a wonder about whether we're going to end up in a place over the next 6 months where the CDU ends up in a kind of minority government because the SPD walks away. How this plays into that is really unclear to me. Germany assumes the EU presidency in the second half of this year, so there's a strong thought, and our team think they're desperate to avoid having to bring the election forward to clash with that. So our view is that the election may be brought forward in 2021, but only to the beginning of the year, not forwards into this year. But given the state of the coalition at the moment and the risks that we end up with a CDU minority government sometime in the next 6 months, I think this really does start to shake German politics.
What about broader European politics? Because it feels as though Angela Merkel is somewhat absent on that stage now, and Emmanuel Macron very much stepping up and trying to play politics with a number of geopolitical events. And I mean, Iran was obviously one example, but there's been a series of different events. What sort of positioning would you expect from Germany if there's a new aggressive contender on the scene? Will they try and wrestle control back from Emmanuel Macron on the European stage?
It seems to me Angela Merkel over the last couple of years has just got faded from that position that she had of being absolutely dominant in European-wide politics and actually international geopolitics. She's just sort of disappeared completely. I think it's really going to be really difficult for any contender for German chancellorship to take over that role in short order. So it seems to me that we're in an environment where Germany is currently not providing that kind of leadership, and it's very, very difficult, I think, for a new chancellor to step in and do it quickly. Britain stepped away.
Robin, what does this mean for the political colour of Europe? Because here we've got a socialist party in Ireland that's made extraordinary gains. Let's just set aside the nationalist ambitions they have, but they've come to power promising to increase spending. Spain, we've seen the socialists in power. Portugal, France maybe buck the trend slightly with Macron, although he doesn't seem to be pushing forward with his reform programme very quickly, and 62 remains the age of retirement in France rather than 64. So is it possible the socialists could come through in Germany and then that fiscal lever that we keep talking about finally gets pulled?
I think it's possible. I mean, one thing to say is that even the UK, so obviously we have a Conservative government, but if you think about what Boris ran on over and above Brexit, of course there's a lot about levelling up the country. There's a lot of sense that in the UK this is a government, even though ostensibly right-wing, which is going to be aggressively pursuing fiscal policy to try and even out income levels. So even in Britain you see some of this in terms of the political dynamic, even if it's not the party. Do I think that we could see a shift to the left across the whole of Europe? Yes. I mean, we've been talking for a long time that Germany's fiscal stance, their kind of fiscal red lines, probably aren't sustainable in the medium term. There's this sense in Germany when you spend time there that the country's underinvested from a public sector perspective, and that public infrastructure is incredibly poor, and a real sense that Germany kind of lost its way. So I think there is a dynamic that you could see that the whole of the continent moving to the left.
Yeah, well, interesting over the weekend, some of the balloons being floated here about mansion taxes and raids on the wealthy's pension and so on and so forth in the March 11th budget. So we'll have to wait and watch here.
Let's push on to the latest developments out of Ireland. Nationalist Party Sinn Féin looks set to be part of an Irish government for the first time, having won the highest percentage of first preference votes in the general election. Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou McDonald has described the vote as a revolution in the ballot box. However, the exact makeup of the next Irish government is unclear, with 82 seats yet to be declared. Sinn Féin's Mary Lou McDonald said she has already reached out to other parties to form a coalition.
Our first preference is to form a new government without Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. That will, of course, be very much dependent on the numbers. I've already made contact with the Greens, with the Social Democrats, with others. So that's the first option that I want us to explore.
It's been a very strong result for Sinn Féin. I think it's a further reflection of political change in Ireland, and we're looking forward to the challenges and the opportunities ahead.
There's been a fairly significant trade in Irish bonds since more certainty around the Brexit process in October, one of the best performing bonds in the euro area. And you can see today actually another swing south. 10% move is what we've got on the 10-year. I want to get out to Willem for a little bit more reaction live from Dublin. Willem, just talk us through the developments and what it means for the business community on the back of this election result so far.
Well, we're still, of course, waiting for a final tally. The counting will continue this morning, Karen. But to talk about this in a bit more detail, I'm joined by Neil Richmond. He's a member of Fine Gael and, of course, a member also of the Lower House of Parliament here in Dublin. Not a great day on Saturday for your party. And I just wonder, is there anything that you can point to specifically that you think meant you lost a bit of ground?
Yeah, it's been a tough day for the party. A lot of good colleagues and friends have lost their seats. Obviously, delighted to be elected myself. There's a few things that came up that we have to be aware of. Bear in mind, we have been in government for 9 years. We took over the country when the economy was in the absolute doldrums, 16% unemployment in the middle of an EU-IMF bailout. We've changed that, but there's still a number of issues in terms of housing, healthcare, childcare as well, where people felt they were frustrated. We saw in the opinion polls people wanted change, and they voted for change. And we see the victory of Sinn Féin and the populist left, not too different than what's happening across Western Europe.
Now, what comes next, of course, is discussions over the next few days, perhaps weeks, to try and form a new government here. The leader of Sinn Féin here in Ireland, we're just hearing from her, Mary Lou McDonald, talking about her desire to avoid talking to Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil if she can, but saying she is, of course, going to be reaching out to the leaders of those parties. Will Leo Varadkar talk to her?
He might have a cursory phone call with her, but no, we have no intention of going into government with Sinn Féin. We have to respect our mandate. We made it very clear before the election that we would not go into government with Sinn Féin. Our policies are completely incompatible with a party of the hard left. We still have concerns in relation to legacy, but if Mary Lou McDonald wants to talk to Micheál Martin, the leader of Fianna Fáil, I'm sure they will. The numbers don't allow for, I suppose, a very obvious result of this election. It took us 70 days to form a government 4 years ago. We could be looking at that again.
And if that doesn't work, is there a chance of a fresh election, would you say?
I don't think so. I think there is a government to be had. It's not straightforward with a three-way split. Our Taoiseach has been very open that he would do business with Fianna Fáil in the national interest. We have a number of very testing months ahead in the Brexit process, but we're probably going to be the party with the second highest amount of seats and the third highest amount of popular votes, so it's not necessarily in our gift to give.
You pointed out that the legacy of austerity kind of attached to your party over the last 9 years may have been difficult for you when it came to the polling on Saturday. I wonder, whoever ends up forming a new government here, do you anticipate they will definitely be spending money on some of these structural issues that voters have highlighted?
Oh, absolutely. We put forward a very realistic manifesto. We didn't want to mislead the people because we're still in a very fragile place economically in this country. Sinn Féin, the parties of the populist left, and indeed Fianna Fáil have promised the sun, moon and stars to the people. It's not feasible. It has the possibility to lead us back into economic ruin, and we have a very volatile global economic position, both in terms of Brexit, ongoing trade discussions, and whatever else comes out of the Middle East.
You mentioned Brexit there, and I know the exit poll on Saturday night showed that Irish voters really weren't that concerned when it came to Brexit as an issue they would vote on. But of course, for international investors, for businesses here in Ireland and across in the UK, Brexit will be a main focus of this election. I'm just wondering, do you anticipate any change to Ireland's Brexit policy in broad brush terms?
I would hope not. I would hope our permanent government, the civil servants, the diplomats will have a good hold in this. Fine Gael is obviously the most pro-European party. We've worked very proactively as a government, both with our European and British colleagues, to deliver a resolution. The withdrawal agreement has protected all our interests, particularly the Good Friday Agreement. But let's not be under any illusion. Sinn Féin are a Eurosceptic party. They're nationalists and they're hard left. If they are to come into government with Fianna Fáil or others, it will announce very different change in approach, and people do need to be wary of that. But if we are to go into opposition, we will hold them to account.
One of Ireland's leading academics on the concept of power sharing and the importance of conversations between various political parties told me last night that he saw the reunification of Ireland over the next decade as being far more likely, not just because of Sinn Féin's potential role in government here, but because of a range of factors. Is that something that politicians here, in your party at least, are prepared for?
To be honest, I think it's a bit of it's really difficult to go down that path. And if we start opening up that discussion when we don't have clarity on what Brexit looks like, we've only just got the institutions in Northern Ireland back up and running after 3 years without. And it was really, really disappointing to see a prominent Sinn Féin TD walk into the Count Centre yesterday singing an IRA song. We're not ready for that discussion. And if Sinn Féin are going to drive that, I really do worry about the volatility on this island. We have to be sensitive. We have to be cautious going forward.
We'll leave it there, Neil Richmond. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Neil Richmond, a member of the Fine Gael party and a newly elected member of the Dáil Éireann, the lower house of Parliament here in Dublin. Back to you guys in the London studio.
Willem, thank you very much. And for more on the Irish general election and a look ahead to what's set to be unprecedented political future for Ireland, head online to cnbc.com. The glitz and the glamour coming your way next. History is made at the Oscars. Stay tuned to find out which film is the first of its kind at this year's Academy Awards.
Now get greedy whenever you want. Subscribe to the American Greed Podcast and take your greed to go.
Crime absolutely pays, and it pays a lot.
Some people will do anything for money.
Hi, I'm Joan London with A Place for Mom. Over the years, we've helped thousands of families find senior care, and today's senior living communities have never been better. With amazing amenities like movie theaters, exercise rooms and swimming pools, public cafes, bars and bistros, even pet care services. And nobody understands your options like the advisors at A Place for Mom. These are local expert advisors that will partner with you to find the perfect place and determine the right level of care, whether that's just a helping hand or full-time memory care. Best of all, it's a free service. Call today. A Place for Mom. You know your family, we know senior living. Together, we'll make the right choice.
Call A Place for Mom right now to get our free ebook on financing senior care, as well as a free referral for senior living communities in your area. Call 1-800-536-7580. That's 1-800-536-7580.
Life Room by Four Seasons, where outdoor living meets future technology. No matter your style or budget, Four Seasons has got you covered. Simple shade from the sun? Covered. Outdoor dining in style? Covered. Need additional living space? Oh yeah, that too. Call today and arrange your free design consultation. Four Seasons, we've got you covered.
The American spirit, inherently competitive, always driven with a hunger, ambition, and an appetite to succeed. The pursuit of prosperity can be unpredictable and thrilling. From breakthroughs to breakdowns, the launches and the crashes. Perseverance is paramount. Knowledge essential.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC.
That's what drives us. It's in our DNA to provide the information you need wherever you are to propel your dreams forward.
History has been made at Hollywood's biggest night. Parasite has won an Academy Award for Best Picture, making it the first ever foreign language film to win the Oscars top prize. Plenty more developments, of course, you can read online. Of course, we didn't mention the red carpet today and some of this stunning outfits.
The fascinating thing to me about this is that we've been sat here talking about the shift in Germany, the shift towards a socialist party in Ireland, and this is a movie about inequality, effectively, and it really captures the zeitgeist of the moment, Robin, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole. It's clear you're seeing. It's a first. It's a non-English language film. It's sort of focusing on issues of the left. It's very Oscars, I guess.
Very Oscars. President Trump has fired two key witnesses who provided damaging testimony to the president in the impeachment trial just 2 days after his Senate acquittal. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a National Security Council expert, was seen on Friday being escorted out of the White House. Vindman's lawyer said the move was retribution for his testimony. President Trump justified the decision on Twitter, saying the decorated war hero had been insubordinate. US Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, announced he was also being removed from his position. The US president is expected to propose a 21% cut in foreign aid, along with toned-down social safety net programs in his 2021 budget proposal. The $4.8 trillion package assumes the US will hit a $1 trillion deficit despite the cuts. The budget would raise military spending, as well as include a major increase in the International Defense Finance Corporation, which provides loans to developing countries. Candidates in the Democratic primary elections jostled in the first major debate following prolonged and controversial Iowa caucuses. The presidential hopefuls focused their attacks on Pete Buttigieg after the Indiana mayor made an unexpected leap to the top of the party's polls along with Senator Bernie Sanders. Tomorrow, the DNC will hold its second primaries in New Hampshire as former Vice President Joe Biden hopes to come back from his poor showing in Iowa. Robin, your thoughts welcome on the outcome of the caucus. Does Pete Buttigieg have a chance?
At the moment, it looks like everyone's got a chance. I think the big thing about Iowa is that in the past, you've seen this big winnowing after Iowa. The media attention's been very high. I think because of what happened there, the field is going to stay wider for longer. And that's going to be very expensive for a lot of candidates, and so that makes it hard for people to stay in the race. I'm not sure that he's got a chance ultimately of getting the nomination, but it's going to make it much more difficult for everyone else. And I do think that this is all playing into Trump's hand. I think this is good for Trump's re-election prospects. When we look at the election, Trump's path to victory is very, very narrow. He didn't win the popular vote. He has to get exactly the right states. But then you look what's happening in the Democratic camp at the moment, and you have to think that path is narrow, but it's certainly very real. So I do think that Trump's got a really good chance this year, but it is going to be contingent on who gets the Democratic nomination. We see Biden as being the best candidate if you want to beat Trump. But right now, you'd have to say that the way that this set of primaries is playing out, his chances are deteriorating.
Robin, what do you make of the equality argument coming into the mix come polling day in the States? Because clearly you've had an economy that has been growing and it has lifted all boats, but some boats have been lifted much further than others. Namely, the very wealthy part of the United States has done well on the back of Trump. That said, Trump's messaging is very strong, that there's been a blue-collar boom. Says enough times, people may actually believe it. So do you think that come polling day, we see people step back and say, well, we haven't done as well as other people. I'm going to vote for someone that is not Trump, and whether that's a left-leaning candidate for the Democrats or a more moderate Democrat candidate?
I'm not sure we are going to see that. When you look at the polls and you talk to people in that sort of blue-collar voter camp, generally their view is that Trump's got their back. And he's fighting for them. I mean, I guess, and even if it's not working, I mean, the trade war with China, he's the first president we've seen really being very, very vocal about those issues. Now, economically, they're wrong-headed, but from a political perspective, I think it is working for him among that constituency. So I think right now, for a Democratic candidate to come out and say that Trump's not doing enough for the blue-collar workers, I think that's pretty tough sell, because while I think you're right that on the ground it's not making much difference, he has changed the narrative.
What about Mayor Bloomberg, very briefly, or Mr. Bloomberg?
See, I've been coming back to that issue about blue-collar workers. I just don't see how Bloomberg is going to work with that key constituency. I just don't see how he can play.
He's spending a lot of money.
But I don't think the narrative about what he stands for is just going to work with that group. I think this idea that Trump has been very, very good at creating this narrative that he's got the back of the common man, I find it difficult to see how Bloomberg could replicate that.
Robin, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for coming in. Robin Bew with us, Managing Director of the Economist Intelligence Unit. Well, that wraps it up for Squawk Box. Thank you for tuning in this morning. Stay with the channel. Street Signs coming up right after this.
A lot of people treat their finances like their health, and for some reason they don't want to peel back the curtain and know what's going on. Figure out all of your expenses. I'm paying this much in rent or mortgage. I'm paying this much in Netflix and cell phone and car insurance. Then you can figure out what income you need to supplement. Figuring out where every penny is going is crucial to you understanding your own financial health.
Invest in you. Ready, set, grow. CNBC and Acorns.
It's time for a special announcement from Four Seasons Sunrooms and Windows. Transform your home and change your life with a Four Seasons sunroom. And watch this announcement until the very end for a special code for exclusive additional savings. And now it's time for Four Seasons. It's time for family gatherings, to stretch imaginations, to get together, or find some time alone. It's time for a Four Seasons sunroom that lets you have it all for less money than you thought. Right now, for a limited time, all Four Seasons sunrooms are up to 25% off, with no money down and no interest for 12 full months. Call Four Seasons today. Four Seasons. It's time. Thanks for watching. Now call the number on your screen and mention the special code TIME and receive exclusive additional savings on your new sunroom. Four Seasons. It's time.
Swelling, stiffness. When your hands hurt, you can't function. Until now. Introducing the new Copperfit compression gloves with sure grip technology to give you more power, more control, and more agility than ever. Our most advanced copper-infused compression fabric woven into an ultra-lightweight performance glove that fits like a second skin to support relief and recovery of sore muscles and painful joint stiffness. And new Sure Grip bands built in to provide a strong, non-slip grip for more power and control.
You need total control of your hands when you're doing anything with construction. Your hands are your livelihood. The Copperfit gloves are great. The grip is outstanding here with these different ribs. It makes my hand a lot more usable. It just feels like you're just ready to start the job.
The gloves have been a game changer for me. They help with flexibility and pain and soreness. They allow me to do my job even better.
Breathable wicking fabric with an open finger design for full range of motion, feel, and control.
They relieve my pain. When I grab something, I'm not in pain. The support or whatever magic these things do, I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter to me what it is. It works.
I get a lot of pain, and it can make it difficult to do the smallest thing. While I'm wearing this, I do not have any pain. I can use it on the keyboard. I can use my phone. I drive with it. I sleep with it. I love this glove.
The new Copperfit compression gloves with Sure Grip technology. Relief from painful muscle and joint soreness. Guaranteed or your money back. Or call 1-800-645-9179 or on the web at getcopperfitgloves.com for only $19.99. Order right now and your shipping is free.
I tried it. I use it. I know it works.
Copperfit gloves definitely just make my life better.
I've used Copperfit before. This has helped my hands so much. These things work.
Feel all new Wednesdays at 10 Eastern. CNBC. Get yours.
Good morning and welcome to Street Signs. I'm Joanna Versace.
And I'm Juliana Tattlebaum. These are your headlines.
China tries to go back to work as a number of major factories reopen for business, but Sunday marks the worst day in the coronavirus outbreak so far, with 97 more fatalities, taking the death toll to over 900 people.
Europe follows Asian equities broadly lower, led down by travel and leisure stocks, as the UK says the epidemic constitutes a serious and imminent public health threat.
15,000 jobs are on the line at Daimler as the luxury car company reportedly looks to cut more costs in a move that could save the group 1.4 billion euros by 2022.
Over before it begins. Germany's Annette Kramp-Karrenbauer will not run for chancellor and will give up her role as CDU party leader after failing to gain support of the Conservative Party.
And here in Dublin, Ireland's Nationalist Party Sinn Féin could enter government for the first time as its leader touts a ballot box revolution in the country's general election.
All right, well, a very warm welcome to Street Signs. Let's kick off the show with an update on coronavirus. China's National Health Commission has confirmed that 97 people have died in the worst day for coronavirus-related deaths to date. It brings the global death toll to over 900, topping the 2003 SARS outbreak, which killed a total of 774 people across the world. A U.S. citizen and Japanese national have also become the first foreign nationals to have died from the virus. Meanwhile, China's factories are struggling to reopen today as at least 24 provinces and cities are scheduled to return to work after the emergency extended Lunar New Year shutdown. Foxconn, China's largest employer and a key Apple contractor, has reportedly been given the green light to reopen its plant in Zhengzhou, although other facilities remain closed. And while manufacturing slowly returns, many white-collar workers will stay at home, including Alibaba and Tencent employees. But other major corporates are returning to normal operations, including auto manufacturers BYD, Tesla, Daimler, and Ford, and hardware giant ZTE. China's ambassador to the UK told the BBC's Andrew Marr the economic impact would be short-term.
At this moment, it's very difficult to predict when we are going to have an inflection point. We certainly hope it will come sooner. But the isolation quarantine method has been very effective. So far, the most cases are concentrated in Hubei and Wuhan. You know, Hubei is about the size of England plus Scotland. And the population is about England plus Wales. There's an impact on the economy. But I think the impact is temporary and short-term. The government now work very hard to encourage people to restore production.
Meanwhile, the Chinese government has pledged $10 billion to fight the coronavirus. The country's finance ministry announced it will deploy funds to ensure that all members of the public have affordable access to diagnosis and treatment. It explained that it wanted to ensure regional measures to contain the outbreak were not hampered by financial constraints. China's central bank has also taken steps to support the economy, injecting liquidity and lowering interest rates. Emily joins us with more on the Chinese market reaction. We've heard of this $10 billion stimulus. And of course, the PBOC last week did that big liquidity stimulus as well, Emily. And we hear today of some companies going back to work. But how has the reaction been, more broadly speaking, by Asian markets this morning?
Well, the Chinese markets saw a very nice day as we kicked off a new trading week here. The Chinese markets extending on 5 sessions of gains already on the easing curbs as well as policy hopes. The Chinese government talking about infrastructure spending, and that's helping to lend support. The Shenzhen Composite ended the day higher, 1.2%. The Shanghai Composite up 0.5% at 2,890. For the Hong Kong markets, we saw some profit taking, 27,241 as the market, of course, closed just about 1 hour ago. Workers began returning back to offices and factories in China today. That's after the Lunar New Year break was pushed out by 10 days in a bid to help control the coronavirus outbreak. The epidemic, as we've been talking about, has killed more than 900 people, and the total number of confirmed cases in excess of 40,000. A large number of workplaces, though, still remain closed, and many are working from home. The State Council says workers in key industries must be helped to return to work as soon as possible in order to resume the production of vital food and medical supplies, and adding that workers should return in batches and not all at once in order to help control any, of course, spread of the coronavirus and infection risk. Extended closures of factories have raised concerns about the global supply chain. At Honhai, this is the world's largest contract manufacturer of electronics, reported receiving government approval to resume production at one of its plants today. The company says it will follow rules of every local government when setting a schedule for reopening its plant. So over in Zhengzhou, reportedly 16,000 of its staff back at work. That represents about 10% of Honhai's staff. A delayed resumption of its operations could be affecting the supply chain. As you may know, Hon Hai has clients like that of Apple, Amazon, Google, and HP, just to name a few. In a statement, the company said employee safety is a top priority and that working with its authorities to meet the requirements in order to resume production across China in a staggered as well as orderly manner. Hubei is the province that has been hardest hit by the outbreak and remains in virtual lockdown still. Roads sealed off, schools in many regions still shut until the end of the month. What we do know is some of the health experts from the World Health Organization arrived in Beijing today to help assess the outbreak there. That is the latest from Hong Kong. Back to you guys.
Certainly appears to be some signs of normalization, but it may just be early days. Emily, thank you for the breakdown of how Chinese markets are reacting overnight.
Well, let's bring it back to the studio. Michael Kushma, Chief Investment Officer of Global Fixed Income, Morgan Stanley Investment Management, joins us now with more. So estimates obviously swirling all around the market in terms of the economic impact of what's happening in China. S&P Ratings has come out downgrading their full year 2020 forecast to 5% growth in China. But they say all that lost ground is going to be made up in 2021. How does that tally with your view?
I think it's a very sensible way of thinking about things. Right now, it does look like a containable event. We'll have to wait and see. It looks like cases are peaking, or the growth rate of cases in China are peaking. We don't quite know how much it's going to spread through the rest of the world. I think that's the big question. Will it really spread, or is that very contained as well? If it's contained and we actually see China coming back to work in a sensible, safe manner, I think we are probably nearing the worst in terms of expectations, and that the shutdown will be quite impactful this quarter, but we should see a V-shaped comeback in coming months, which would mean we'll be back to work and things will be fairly normal. The things which won't come back to work were services. People won't go on vacation. They won't go back to school for a while. Some spending will be lost forever, but it should be fairly small and contained and not disrupt the sort of nice trajectory we were on and the upbeat assessments we were having just a month or so ago.
So fairly bullish if you're able to look past the next quarter or so. How are you investing around this thesis?
It's what's going on in the world today, I think, is not. This is another example of a two or thesis of things going on in the world today of disruption, and this is going on everywhere in industries, in monetary policy, fiscal policy, technological change. This is disruption going on. We see that leads to dispersion in economic outcomes, in financial market outcomes. So we have different sectors doing very well. So far, what are the most impactful sectors of this has been oil, commodity prices. They're still well down from where they were. S&P 500 is going back up again. Within the S&P 500, very different performance of different companies. And I think that is the story we have, is that should be fairly contained. We should have a recovery coming back on track, but it will impact different countries, different sectors in meaningful ways, and that we have to navigate through those changes in order to understand where the best places are to invest.
And it's not so easy, though, to pick up on the timing. You are a fixed income guy, and we have analysts come on the show all the time bemoaning the fact that the fixed income markets are extremely rich, looking at historical valuations and even versus traditional metrics of valuing fixed income. And yet, what we've seen in the last couple of months is fixed income has been a very effective instrument at hedging geopolitical risk, hedging growth fears, hedging, more recently against coronavirus. Do you see that continuing?
I think so. I think that in most countries, and even in Europe, we have negative interest rates. There is still a possibility they could become more negative in the short term, or other methods central banks could use in terms of yield curve control, controlling interest rates farther out the yield curve, or gaining in more quantitative easing along the way. But there clearly is confidence in central banks' ability to provide additional support to financial markets and economies to offset a lot of negative developments within reason. Obviously, they can't offset all developments. If factories are shut, factories are shut. It doesn't matter if you lend more money if no one's producing anything. But that should be temporary. We're really worried about investor confidence, business confidence, consumer confidence, and willingness to spend money down the road. And central banks are providing a big boost in confidence about their willingness to provide that support.
Okay, if that is the case, we just had ECB come up with their big stimulus back in September. The Fed are essentially signaling that they're done for the time being. Why has U.S. fixed income outperformed European fixed income the last couple of months?
Because the market has decided that the Fed may actually cut interest on the back of this unexpected weakening in global economic conditions. So the market's pricing in 1 to 2 rate cuts in current pricing. So it's not surprising that all U.S. yields have come down because there is room for the Fed to cut interest rates. Most importantly, it's because they already were cutting rates last year. We are on an easing trajectory. The Fed has basically said they're not interested in raising rates anytime soon. They're more likely, if need be, to cut rates than raise rates with inflation below target. This is another reason for them to err on the side of too easy rather than too much. But it isn't providing insurance. So even if the Fed doesn't cut interest rates, if the market takes that out and yields go back up, it's only because things are getting better.
It's a valid point. Just a final question on the fiscal side of things. President Trump, is proposing a new budget for 2021, but that would still entail deficits north of, as much as $1 trillion of 5% worth of GDP, a deficit worth 5% of GDP. None of that is being factored in to the Treasury market. Why is that the case? Why is it that investors continue to shrug off the U.S. fiscal position at this point?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One is the direction of interest rates. So sure, the Fed is potentially on a further rate cutting cycle. We'll have to wait and see. So that's a positive. The other bigger factor is the globalization of interest rates. The U.S. rates are not just set in the U.S. on U.S. fiscal policy. It's set around the world. U.S. Treasuries are the safe haven asset. It is the method to best hedge other risks, geopolitical, economic, all over the world. So there's this flight to safety, and Treasuries provide that liquidity. So U.S. Treasury yields, I think, are really move in many ways independently of U.S. domestic fundamentals to a degree. Obviously, you can get fundamentals deteriorating so rapidly that no one wants that asset anymore. But I think we're far away from that primarily because there's really no alternative to U.S. Treasuries.
All right. Yeah, very fair point for the time being, at least. Michael, thank you very much for joining us on Street Signs today. Michael Kushma, Chief Investment Officer of Global Fixed Income at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. And stay with us on Street Signs because we are going to talk about deeper cuts for Daimler. Find out why the luxury car maker is reportedly putting more jobs on the line. We'll be right back.
I created Hint Water to make water taste better. We started in one grocery store. Now we're online and everywhere. And we couldn't have done it without NetSuite.
NetSuite is the world's #1 cloud business system. Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/grow.
The world's newest ocean cruise line is yet again a world's best. Viking's elegant ships deliver a superb, inclusive experience with enriching shore excursions, alternative dining, all veranda staterooms, Wi-Fi, and much more. We're very proud to have been named a world's best 4 years in a row by Travel + Leisure readers. Learn more at vikingcruises.com.
For drug-free sinus and allergy relief, experience Navage.
This time of year, I get so stuffed up, but Navage flushes my sinuses so I can breathe again.
Navage uses powered suction to flush out allergens, germs, mucus, and dirt.
My doctor recommends Navage to breathe better through my nose, and it works. Congestion's gone, and I feel great.
And Navage is so much easier than a neti pot.
Trusted by happy noses everywhere, Navage is nature's decongestant. Online and at these fine retailers.
Robinhood believes now is the time to do money without the commission fees, so you can start investing today, wherever you are, even hanging with your dog. So, what are you waiting for? Download now and get your first stock on us. Robinhood.
We got one of those new purple mattresses, and it is amazing. You have to try it.
Oh, this doesn't feel like memory foam.
No.
This feels amazing.
Right?
What is it?
Actually, it's called Purple, and it's a completely unique comfort technology, meticulously designed to cradle and support the human body.
Cool.
Bundle up and save with Purple's President's Day sale. Visit purple.com/TV.
Do you worry about going to the dentist? Well, relax. The Carefree Dental Card is now available in your area. Call the number on your screen and we'll send your actual card at no cost today. With the Carefree Dental Card, you go to the dentist whenever you need and you instantly pay a lot less. The Carefree Dental Card is just $15.95 a month. So call now and make going to the dentist carefree.
Call 1-800-478-0809 to receive your free Carefree Dental Card information kit.
Global economies feeling the spread of coronavirus fears. How could a slowdown in China impact U.S. markets? The moves investors should consider. Squawk on the Street, today, 9 a.m. Eastern. Watch and listen live on the CNBC app.
Welcome back to Street Signs, everybody. Let's just give you a rundown of what's been going on in markets over the weekend. Friday, let's start with Friday. Obviously, the highlight in the U.S. session was that non-farm payroll print coming in much higher than expectations, 225,000 jobs created. But obviously, as ever, the nitty-gritty was in the details. And some people were disheartened by the fact that the wages came in slightly lower than expectations. All that boded not so well for the end of the Wall Street session on Friday. The three majors ended up in negative territory after 4 positive consecutive days. Still very good week for the majority. But of course, overnight, we are yet again being focused on coronavirus and the Chinese response. They have announced a $10 billion stimulus package over the weekend that's helped lift Chinese equities. And this is in addition to the PBOC liquidity stimulus that was announced last week as well. Some companies are moving to go back to work again, though others, of course, talk about the knock-on effects from the supply chain. So a bit of a mixed bag, a mixed picture economically coming out of China. But overall, what we have seen is Chinese markets yet overnight performing well with some green on the board and markets outside China trading in negative territory. So it has been somewhat of a mixed handover for stocks, European indices. You can see the stock 600 is down about 1/4 percentage point in early trading. In terms of the individual bourses, though, it is a negative session this morning. FTSE 100 down about 1/4 percentage point. Not so much to watch out for in terms of data today, but we do get the GDP numbers to watch out for this week in the UK. We have the Xetra DAX also down about 0.2 percentage point in Germany. Watch out for the political situation over there. And it has emerged this morning. Multiple sources are citing that AKK, the current leader of the CDU party, will not be running for chancellorship. So that is something to be watching out for. Obviously, big questions about the coalition future there too. We'll be talking more about that on the show. A bit of green for the periphery indices. In terms of sectors, we have basic resources, banks, and construction material right at the top. No surprise there because of their linkages to the Chinese equity markets. As I mentioned, they were positive. Right at the bottom, we've got travel and leisure also getting hit by the knock-on effects from coronavirus. Retail down 0.5 percentage point, and then tech also struggling slightly this morning in Europe as well.
Jemana, thank you very much for the market update. Let's just give you a little bit more color on Daimler, who is reportedly set to cut as many as 15,000 jobs as the German car maker ramps up cost-cutting measures. That's according to Germany's Handelsblatt newspaper.
And Credit Suisse shares are up in the second day of trading after the bombshell ouster of CEO Tidjane Thiam. He is set to deliver his company's quarterly and full-year earnings for the last time this Thursday. The Swiss bank's board decided to end Thiam's 5-year tenure after a 4-month investigation into a spying scandal that caused major reputational damage to one of Europe's major lenders. A second investigation over similar charges is currently underway by the Swiss regulator FINMA. Thomas Gottstein, the head of the company's local business, will succeed Thiam. Let's bring in Filippo Aluati, the senior credit analyst from Hermes. So unexpected announcement out of Credit Suisse on Friday. With Thiam stepping down. It seems to me that it's a situation of, one incident last summer could be perceived as an isolated incident. When the second spying scandal came up around December time, the board essentially said enough is enough. This is causing too much reputational damage. We need to see a changeover in management here.
Yeah, I think so, because of course, so once the regulator is involved and the firm, over the weekend became evident and the regulator wasn't really happy about the leadership of Credit Suisse, then I think probably that was the stroke that broke the camel's back. And of course, Thiam also pays this for non-financial issue at Credit Suisse, but the strategy, if you look over the last 5 years, at least it seems to be working. So I think it's just another reminder that to make a successful CEO, you need also something that someone can regard as soft skills. Yeah.
Let's talk about the timing of this announcement. Looking through some research from Citi, they said in recent investor marketing in Switzerland in particular, every investor meeting included questions around CEO succession. But the timing of the announcement came as a surprise to many. Do you think it has anything to do with their upcoming earnings, which are due out later this week?
To some extent, so it seems to me logical that a CEO gone out on a annual result number, and I think on Thursday they disclosing the full number for 2019. And also I think it's also the end of the cycle because the restructuring has been successful, even though the share price is not where it should be. But I think it's just it's marked the end of the cycle. And to be fair, so the Credit Suisse machine is working. I think also the board just put the reputation on the bank because, of course, as we know, they involve in wealth management. So the intangible or the franchise also needs to be pristine, and I think that was one of the reasons they decided to go for a change of leadership.
We talk a lot about the reputational impact that it's going to have on the bank, but I just wonder if it's actually having much of a reputational impact. If you look at the stock price performance, since the first story came out, Iqbal Khan, over the summer, the stock is actually up 5%. So the stock hasn't really got hit. It hasn't been a negative performance. And then second, if you talk to them about net new money that has come in, that also hasn't been derailed at all. So is it perhaps a situation where the outside world is more concerned about the actual reputational impact than what investors are doing with their money?
Yeah, I think it's a combo of both of those two factors. So you're correct to say that the stock is up by 5%, but also it really depends whether you benchmark Credit Suisse to, and I think also they still lag versus, for example, the American banks, which had a decent Q4 number. So it is also, by definition, reputational damage on the franchise it takes some time to filter through, and as you correctly say, the 9 months 19, that's what they were showing also strong flows, especially in APAC, where they trying to recycle some of the capital away from some part of the investment bank. So, but reputational damage is always take some. It's a bit lagger, and I think it take. I guess the bank also doesn't want to take any chance with that.
Also in many respects, the heavy lifting for what needed to be done in the bank has already been done now. People are asking about whether or not we could see a different strategy out of Mr. Gottstein. But if you look at what Mr. Thiam did, the resizing of the investment bank, shifting the focus back to Asia again, a refocus on wealth management. We spoke to him a year ago and he said, look, the restructuring is done. Now our focus is just going to be on growth and doing more with the existing client base that we have. Are you expecting a change in strategy out of the new CEO who comes from the domestic bank?
Yeah, no, you're correct to say that the strategy has largely worked. So it's difficult. To some extent, the direction of travel is set. And I think the main challenge for Mr. Gottstein will be the growth trajectory, especially in Asia and especially in wealth management. As we know, also those type of assets are very expensive if you look on price to multiple. So it will be up to him and his team to, if he goes for some, say, external acquisition, to pay the right price. He's been quite good at the Swiss unit, but it still remain a unknown quantity to the majority of the investors. So we'll see. We'll hear from him, I guess, also in the first half, and we'll see where his priority lies.
Now, in the run-up to Friday's announcement, a report suggested that shareholders, anyway, were putting their weight behind Tidjane Thiam and instead were calling for the resignation of the chairman. Clearly, the chairman has won in that battle. But is the pressure gone off of him, or is there still a chance that we see him removed from his seat?
I don't know. Credit Suisse, they announced that so he's going to go by the, I believe, the AGM 2021. So we'll see what comes up. But I think also by saying AGM 21, to some extent also they imply, but that's just me speculating, that maybe a succession plan also for the chair is in place. But I think also we'll learn more on that on Thursday.
All right. Thank you very much for weighing in, and we'll all look forward to those numbers out on Thursday. Filippo Aluati, Senior Credit Analyst from Hermes. And in other news, several senior Conservative lawmakers have raised concern over Huawei's involvement in developing the UK's 5G infrastructure. The Tory party members are calling on the government to exclude any high-risk vendors in what could mark the first rebellion by MPs against Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The UK government last month decided to allow the Chinese tech company to build up non-critical parts of the country's 5G networks. This despite concerns from ministers and allies. Beijing is meanwhile now also urging France not to discriminate against Huawei, following reports the Chinese tech giant could face restrictions in several French cities. The Chinese embassy in Paris says it had been assured Huawei would be treated just like other vendors. Speaking on the BBC's Andrew Marr show on Sunday, China's ambassador to the UK said Huawei had become the target of a witch hunt, simply for being a Chinese company.
I think what they're doing is a kind of a witch hunt. Number one, Huawei is a private-owned company, nothing to do with the Chinese government. The only problem we have is they are a Chinese company, and that's the problem. I will leave Prime Minister to deal with President Trump. I think I always say UK, Britain can only be great when it has its own independent foreign policy.
All right, stay with us. We're going to take a break. But when we come back, we'll be live in Dublin as Sinn Féin surges in the Irish election count, upending almost 100 years of centre-right politics. We'll be right back.
Power outages can be unpredictable, inconvenient, and disruptive to your life, posing a real threat to your comfort and safety. When the power goes out, you have no lights, no refrigeration, no heating or air conditioning. Your well or sump pump won't work. Your modern daily electronics are rendered useless. And what if the power's out for days or weeks? Are you prepared? You can be with a Generac home standby generator.
24 days we were without power. I had water, I had ice, I had coffee, I had air conditioner. I was able to stay here because of Generac.
When an outage occurs, your Generac home standby generator automatically powers up, so your life goes on without disruption. You and your family are comfortable, safe, and secure. Generac generators run on your home's existing natural gas or propane. And Generac's standard Mobile Link remote monitoring system keeps you posted on operating status, maintenance updates, and more. Generac generators are designed, engineered, and purpose-built in the USA. Generac is the #1 manufacturer of home standby generators in the world. 8 out of 10 home generators are Generac, with thousands of satisfied customers.
Very good product. Very, very good reviews from everybody.
Prices start at just $19.99, and special financing is available with surprisingly affordable monthly payments. Call now to schedule your free in-home assessment with one of Generac's 6,000 nationwide dealers. The call is free, the assessment is free, and there's no obligation to buy. Plus, if you act now, you'll receive a 10-year extended warranty absolutely free. That's a $995 value. Call now, so the next time there's a power outage, your home powers up. Power your life with Generac. Call or go online to schedule your free in-home assessment today.
The world's newest ocean cruise line is yet again a world's best. Viking's elegant ships deliver a superb, inclusive experience with enriching shore excursions, alternative dining, all-veranda staterooms, Wi-Fi, and much more. We're very proud to have been named a world's best 4 years in a row by Travel + Leisure readers. Learn more at vikingcruises.com.
CNBC's elite list of disruptive innovators is back.
It's a big moment for indigo, obviously, but it's a big moment for agriculture.
Here's your chance to rank among CNBC's Disruptor 50. Go to cnbc.com/disruptors and nominate your company today.
Welcome back to Street Signs. I'm Juliana Tattlebaum.
And I'm Jemima Versace, and these are your headlines.
China tries to go back to work as a number of major factories reopen for business. But Sunday marks the worst day in the coronavirus outbreak so far, with 97 more fatalities, taking the death toll to over 900 people.
Europe follows Asian equities broadly lower, led down by travel and leisure stocks, as the UK says the epidemic constitutes a serious and imminent public health threat.
15,000 jobs are on the line at Daimler as the luxury car company reportedly looks set to cut more costs in a move that could save the group 1.4 billion euros by 2022.
And history in the making. South Korean film Parasite becomes the first ever foreign language film to win Best Picture at the Oscars, while war epic 1917 is the other big winner.
All right, well, we're now about 1.5 hours into the first trading session of the week. And as you can see here with the sea of red beside me, European markets are trading on the back foot this morning. Bear in mind, though, last week, the Euro Stoxx 600 ended more than 3% higher. So perhaps a bit of profit taking coming through this morning as we don't have a huge amount of new macro news for investors to digest. So instead, setting up for the week ahead. But that death toll does continue to tick higher. So investors continue to very, very closely watch those coronavirus developments. Let's take a look at FX markets. We've had some interesting news on the political front here in Europe this morning. So let's kick off with the euro, which is trading a touch stronger versus the dollar, just below the 110 mark. Germany in focus with AKK set to not run for chancellor. We're going to discuss that story in more detail in just a moment. Over in the UK, sterling is trading about 10 basis points higher to 129. Ireland also in focus this morning after this weekend's elections. Let's get over to the U.S. and take a look at what futures are indicating for the Wall Street Open. We are looking at a fairly muted start to trade this week. S&P and the Dow set to open a touch lower, but essentially unchanged this morning. Friday, of course, we had that stronger than expected U.S. non-farm payrolls report. And then later this week, we will look ahead to Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's testimony to Congress.
All right, and let's switch on to one of the top European stories this morning. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel's protege, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, has said she will not run for chancellor in next year's federal election. That is according to a Christian Democratic Union lawmaker. Merkel has reportedly urged Kramp-Karrenbauer to stay on as a minister, but the party is set to start the process to replace her this summer. Friedrich Merz, Armin Laschet, and Jens Spahn are seen as potential successors, and the CDU board is currently meeting, and there will be a press conference at 13:30 CET. So some breaking developments out of Germany this morning. Let's bring in Carsten Nickel, the Deputy Director of Research at Teneo Intelligence. Just looking back at what's happened in the last couple of months, it seems to me that the elections in Thuringia were really the writing on the wall for AKK, and it really illustrated that she had a lack of hold over the party in that they were able to ally themselves with the far right in order to secure the regional premiership for the FDP member. And of course, Merkel came back very strongly against that decision. And so all of that led to a lot of speculation as to exactly what is happening at the top of CDU. And this has led to where we are today. I mean, what is your take on where we go from here as a party and in terms of leadership there?
I think, unfortunately, we're going back to where we were 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, when Angela Merkel said that she wouldn't run again for the party presidency. And that opened up this whole process of, trying to pick a new leader, with AKK ultimately narrowly winning that contest. I think the big underlying question, we've been obviously very focused on AKK's personal performance in this role, but I think the big underlying question hasn't been resolved, and that is, does the CDU want to look back towards the kind of more traditional right, or does it want to stick to that centrist course that it has been on for the last 15 years under Merkel?
But is there any risk at all that the CDU actually splits? Because again, Angela Merkel, one of her defining moments in her legacy was allowing all of the Syrian refugees to come into the country, and she received a lot of flack for that. But that was one of the defining moments of her own legacy. But since then, the CDU has shifted increasingly more right, and ostensibly to put up a fight against the AfD, who have been very, very anti-immigration. And this was really illustrated by what happened in Thuringia over the weekend. They had no choice but to go in that direction to secure the seats.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the strategic dilemma. And obviously, yes, there was the migration crisis. Before that, we had the Eurozone crisis. You know, this whole story of the CDU kind of reacting to the reality that the center has basically become more liberal in Germany, and Merkel was very good catering to that center, while at the same time, as you say, the strong demand from within the CDU being there to say, well, look, we need to kind of stick to our traditionalist credentials. And I think what we've seen from AKK's failure in this role in just 1 year, basically, is that this structural question hasn't been resolved, and it will be with us until the very end of Merkel's chancellery.
And on that note, I mean, how much of AKK's struggle was actually down to her as a leader, and how much is it just a function of the coalition, the makeup of the coalition, and the increasing fragmentation across the German political landscape?
Yeah, I would tend towards the latter. Obviously, again, her personal performance, that was really unfortunate. But my concern, looking back 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, my concern was that, you know, whoever you end up with, a more traditionalist leader or a on paper more liberal leader like her, will preside over a party that is structurally divided, as you say. And I think the real problem here is the coalition. Yes, the coalition with the Social Democrats. No, I think the coalition actually of voters that unite behind the CDU, traditionalists and centrists, and that doesn't go together very well in this day and age of fragmentation and polarization.
How is the Green Party going to fit into the future of the German government? Clearly, there's been an uptick in support for them. So how do they feature in the upcoming election cycle?
I think the Greens are ultimately the big winner of that big standoff within the CDU. We have been focused very much on the AfD. That's very headline grabbing, fully understood. But I think the real centrist alternative in German politics these days is the Greens.
And Hamburg will be a big test for that, right? We've got regional elections coming up.
Absolutely.
I just want your take also as well on new SPD leadership. We had also the new leaders announced towards the end of the year last year, and their stance is slightly less warm towards the coalition than their predecessors. Is that going to prove problematic as well, especially if they're looking at a defeat in Hamburg?
Yeah, I think the situation of the SPD has been precarious for many years now. As you say, they've been looking increasingly to the left in their case with this new leadership. But then again, actually, these two new leaders settling in over the last couple of weeks, we've seen that I think they know that their options at the end of the day are limited. So they need to stick to that coalition, I think, because they can't afford the risk of early elections before Angela Merkel is out.
The glue that ties them together.
And if we can maybe just broaden this out to broader Europe, this idea of fragmentation among political parties is seen across Europe. And we're about to get into the Ireland story in more detail with our colleague Willem Martz. But just your quick take on what this means, you know, looking across Europe. Is it sustainable to have this kind of fragmentation?
Yeah, I think the big question, and we'll see this in the Irish case as well, fragmentation is all nice and well as long as you have a political culture and political institutions in place that allow you to cobble together some sort of centrist consensus. On that front, when I look at Germany going forward, I wouldn't be too worried, and with the Greens emerging as the new kind of centrist force. But I think that's exactly the question we'll be seeing in Ireland as well. Can we form these centrist coalitions despite fragmentation?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Carsten Nickel, Deputy Director of Research, Teneo Intelligence.
Now, meanwhile, Storm Ciara has wreaked havoc on part of the UK. Britain and northern continental Europe faced hundreds of cancelled flights and several serious flood warnings on Sunday after the storm battered with the region, with winds reaching over 90 miles per hour. Energy companies in the UK said over 670,000 homes lost power over the weekend.
And let's get right into that Ireland story. Nationalist Party Sinn Féin looks set to be part of an Irish government for the first time, having won the highest percentage of first preference votes in the general election. Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou McDonald has described the vote as a revolution in the ballot box. However, the exact makeup of the next Irish government is unclear, with 82 seats yet to be declared. Now, Fianna Fáil had ruled out a coalition with Sinn Féin prior to the election, but speaking after the vote, leader Micheál Martin stopped short of rejecting the prospect.
We will listen to people. We've listened to the people. They have voted for, in the main, you know, the three main parties, but the other parties like the Greens doing well as well, and independents. So the point I would make there is I think we're looking at a far more fragmented political landscape historically, and I think that's embedded into our situation.
Willem Marks now joins us live from Dublin. Willem, give us a bit more color. What has led to the success of Sinn Féin in this election, and what are the next steps for forming a government in Dublin?
The people I've spoken to over the last 24 hours saying that Sinn Féin campaigned very successfully on domestic issues like housing, like healthcare, appealing to voters' concerns about the rising costs of things like commuting and childcare. That's why they've seen such a surge in support. They've already won 29 seats so far. The count will continue in a little while, but we've only seen around half of the total seats allocated. That 29 number already higher than their existing 22 in the previous parliament here. And what that means is that the two-party system that's dominated Irish politics for so many decades seems to have come to an end. And the three main parties now, Sinn Féin, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, all now looking to win more than 20% of the national vote. That will make the discussions around who will form a new government, who they will work with, incredibly complex. Mary Lou McDonald, the woman who successfully led this campaign for Sinn Féin, speaking yesterday, talked about her preferred course of action when it comes to choosing government partners.
Our first preference is to form a new government without Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. That will, of course, be very much dependent on the numbers. I've already made contact with the Greens, with the Social Democrats, with others. So that's the first option that I want us to explore.
It's been a very strong result for Sinn Féin. I think it's a further reflection of political change in Ireland, and we're looking forward to the challenges and the opportunities ahead.
The Sinn Féin leader there saying that she wouldn't, in an ideal world, be working with Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, but of course she has said that she will be reaching out to the leaders of those two parties. Leo Varadkar, the incumbent Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, and leader of the Fine Gael party, saying that he's not prepared to talk to Miss McDonnell, and of course saying that Sinn Féin is not compatible with his own party's politics when it comes to issues like the economy, like criminal justice. In the next couple of days, when these results get clearer and we get a better sense of the arithmetic for the lower house of parliament here, we'll get a greater sense, I imagine, as to which parties might start to talk to which others. The tie-up, though, between Fine Gael and Sinn Féin seems to be one that is off the table. Micheál Martin, the leader of Fianna Fáil, saying a little bit more circumspect in the circumstances.
Willem, perhaps a more longer-term question for you. I know you've been out there speaking to various policymakers and analysts, but one of these central points of Sinn Féin is that they would like to hold a vote at some point in the next couple of years about a potential reunification of the island. That obviously would be a major development for the politics regionally and obviously within Ireland as well. I mean, what is the likelihood that something like that actually does take place? And is there any signal at all from other parties that they would be willing to enter into a coalition if that is one of the major points that Sinn Féin have been pushing for?
Well, analysts I was speaking to are at pains to point out that the policy of Sinn Féin when it comes to the reunification of Ireland is not seemingly something that has helped them see this rise in support during this election, but of course it is a central part of their raison d'etre and their party platform. But of course it's actually officially part of the party platforms for both Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. These are Republican parties that would like to see United Ireland in theory. There is a majority amongst Irish voters for a referendum vote in the next 5 years. The survey that's resulted in that number is not a particularly clearly posed question, people have told me, but it does indicate that were that to be a possibility, voters would support it. Someone I spoke to last night who's had decades of experience working with both the British and the Irish government on this kind of issue said that he didn't anticipate that happening in this next parliament. But he said that the variety of factors involving Brexit, the changing economy here in the Republic, and some other factors as well, make it more likely that in the next 10 years, so by 2030, we could see a peaceful transition to a unified Ireland.
Wow, Willem, that would certainly be something. Well, thank you so much for bringing us that color from Dublin. All right, and just a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter at StreetSignCNBC if you want to get involved in any of the political conversations we've been having this morning around Germany, Ireland, or anything else. You can also tweet us directly at CNBC Ju and at CNBC Juliana.
And also stay with us because history has been made at the Oscars. Stay tuned to find out which film is the first of its kind at this year's Academy Awards.
I need new struts for my 2010 Chevy. Let me see struts by AC Delco, KYB, and any under $50.
We might be able to get some struts from the warehouse.
Why watch the counterman tap on his computer and hope he chooses the right part? Go to rockauto.com. Auto and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. Choose the brands, prices, and features you want. Auto parts at the lowest price. Conveniently delivered to your home or business.
All the parts your car will ever need, Rock Auto.
Beautiful, but support the leg. When I started Cobra Kai, the lack of control over my business made me a little intense. But now I practice a different philosophy. QuickBooks helps me get paid, manage cash flow, and run payroll. And now I'm back on top with Koala Kai. Hey! More mercy.
Save over 40 hours a month with Intuit QuickBooks, the easy way to a happier business.
Here's a razor that works differently. The Gillette Skin Guard. It has a guard between the blades that helps protect skin. The Gillette Skin Guard.
Diamonds. The Jewelry Exchange has certified half carat for $7.90, 1 carat $19.90, 2 carat $59.90, plus thousands of GIA diamonds at the guaranteed lowest price with thousands of designer mounts. Buy factory direct and save. The Jewelry Exchange Direct.
Hi, I'm Joan London with A Place for Mom. Over the years, we've helped thousands of families find senior care, and today's senior living communities have never been better, with amazing amenities like movie theaters, exercise rooms and swimming pools, public cafes, bars and bistros, even pet care services. And nobody understands your options like the advisors at A Place for Mom. These are local expert advisors that will partner with you to find the perfect place and determine the right level of care, whether that's just a helping hand or full-time memory care. Best of all, it's a free service. Call today. A Place for Mom. You know your family, we know senior living. Together, we'll make the right choice.
Call A Place for Mom right now to get our free ebook on financing senior care, as well as a free referral for senior living communities in your area. Call 1-800-211-0451. That's 1-800-211-0451.
Global economies feeling the spread of coronavirus fears. How could a slowdown in China impact U.S. markets? The moves investors should consider. Squawk on the Street, today, 9 a.m. Eastern. Watch and listen live on the CNBC app.
Well, history has been made at Hollywood's biggest night. Parasite has won an Academy Award for Best Picture, making it the first ever foreign language film to win the Oscars top prize. Well, let's get out to Jennifer Bjorklund, NBC News, who joins us now from where all the action took place. Jennifer, what was the reception like to that historic win for Parasite?
It was an incredible night here in Hollywood. That movie, call it a comedy, drama, thriller, horror show. You can't really categorize it, and it shows that great storytelling transcends language barriers as well. Parasite winning Best Picture, the first foreign film ever to do that. It capped a night that saw it winning 3 other Oscars as well. Best International Film, Original Screenplay, and Best Director for Bong Joon-ho. No surprises in the acting categories. Title role in Joker brought Joaquin Phoenix his first Oscar as Best Actor. It was a second Oscar for Renee Zellweger, who won Best Actress for playing film legend Judy Garland in Judy. Best Supporting Actress went to Laura Dern for Marriage Story, and she saluted her actor parents Bruce Dern and Diane Ladd, who were in the audience. And Brad Pitt had the crowd roaring and on their feet as he got up to accept supporting actor honors for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So it really was an exciting night here in Hollywood where the silver screen, the big screen still ruled. Netflix came in strong with 24 nominations, leading the field, but walked away with just 2 Oscars. So the Oscar love was spread pretty evenly throughout the field.
You know, Jennifer, rewind back to 1 year ago, and I remember the film Roma, that Netflix film, swept up all of the Oscars, and it was a bit of a shake-up and a surprise to the industry at the time. Do you think Hollywood is breathing a sigh of relief this time that Netflix, some of the Netflix names like Marriage Story, didn't actually scoop up as many awards this year as they did last year?
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of a pushback. Who knows? But interesting that it was another foreign film, and it was something that it was a little different, a little off the beaten path, like Parasite was this year. So definitely some similarities, but big differences in the big screen versus the small screen, and how things have been evolving through the last few years.
Yeah, no, most definitely, and perhaps a sign of things to come in the future as well. Jennifer, thank you so much for the breakdown, and that was Jennifer Bjorklund from NBC News, covering all of the Oscars and the awards over the last 24 hours. Now, elsewhere, President Trump has fired 2 key witnesses who provided damaging testimony to the president in the impeachment trial just 2 days after his Senate acquittal. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a National Security Council expert, was seen on Friday being escorted out of the White House. Vindman's lawyer said the move was retribution for his testimony. President Trump justified the decision on Twitter, saying the decorated war hero had been insubordinate. U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, announced he was also being removed from his position. And the U.S. president is expected to propose a 21% cut in foreign aid, along with a toned-down social safety net program in his 21 budget proposal. The $4.8 trillion package assumes the U.S. will hit a $1 trillion deficit despite the cuts. The budget would raise military spending, as well as include a major increase in the International Defense Finance Corporation, which provides loans to developing countries.
Sticking with the U.S., candidates in the Democratic primary elections jostled in the first major debate following prolonged and controversial Iowa caucuses. The presidential hopefuls focused their attacks on Pete Buttigieg after the Indiana mayor made an unexpected leap to the top of the party's polls, along with Senator Bernie Sanders. Tomorrow, the DNC will hold its second primaries in New Hampshire as former Vice President Joe Biden hopes to come back from his poor showing in Iowa. NBC's Jay Gray is in New Hampshire, where the candidates are campaigning around the clock.
The road to the Democratic nomination winds past diners and cafes,
We'll build a campaign.
town halls and gymnasiums across New Hampshire. The political fight on the ground here, hand-to-hand combat.
And what this campaign is about is asking people to think outside of the box.
Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg.
We need our stories brought to Washington, and the answers are going to come to Washington, not from Washington.
Leading in the polls.
This isn't about polls. This is about how we repair an America that's not working for most Americans.
Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden looking to close the gap.
And my dad used to have an expression, it's not when you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up.
Amy Klobuchar seems to be the wild card right now, behind, gaining momentum and more than $2 million in donations after a strong debate performance.
That we need a president that brings people together instead of shutting them out. Someone that is able to win big, and that's me.
The New Hampshire primary, an important bridge to deciding who will ultimately battle President Trump for the White House.
I think if the right candidate comes to the top, then things can happen and could be a real race.
The race for Democrats picking up the pace significantly from here, with 2 debates, another caucus and primary, all in the next 3 weeks. The New Hampshire primary also has the attention of the White House. The president has a rally scheduled here tomorrow on the eve of Tuesday's vote. Jay Gray, NBC News, Manchester, New Hampshire.
Well, the good news about having a New Hampshire caucus tomorrow is that we can finally stop talking about the Iowa caucus. It's been like a week and we're still actually going on and on about the Iowa. Even Bernie Sanders himself said enough talking about Iowa caucus. We need to move on. But definitely, certainly something to watch from the political perspective the next 24 hours. All right, just let's recap what happened on Friday. The U.S. economy added 225,000 jobs in January, well above Wall Street estimates. The unemployment rate ticked higher to 3.6%, but that's in part because the labor force participation rate increased to its highest level since 2013. Average hourly earnings rose 3.1% year on year, also surpassing expectations. So decent number on the headline print, the 225K number obviously coming in higher than expectations. Slight uptick in unemployment rate if we want to be nitpickers, but overall wage growth around 3.1% as well. So the numbers for the U.S. economy is still pretty strong, despite everything that's going on.
Yeah, still pretty strong. Will be interesting, I think, to hear what Jerome Powell says in his testimony on Capitol Hill later this week, because obviously the external risks are what turned the Fed more bearish last year in the form of the trade war, and now we're sitting here with coronavirus.
And many different analysts out there are downgrading their assessment of where growth is headed to, especially because China's growth contributes to around 1/3 of global growth. If China is growing at 4% for this quarter, then obviously this is going to have a knock-on effect on other countries as well. So expect him to field a lot of questions on coronavirus. A quick look, though, at U.S. futures before we head out. The three majors are pointed negative this after a negative close on Friday. But that is it for Street Time today. I'm Joanna Persacci.
And I'm Juliana Tattlebaum. Worldwide Exchange is up next.
Rising energy costs are frustrating. Electricity rates continue to increase, and there's no relief in sight. It's also smart to prepare for power outages that can leave you in the dark. You need a solution that will help you save money, prepare for power outages, and help the environment. Introducing the Generac Power Cell, a battery storage system that harnesses the power from the sun to help reduce your electric bill and provide backup power during utility power outages.
With the battery storage solution, we're saving about $450 a month.
PowerCell's revolutionary technology captures and stores electricity either from solar panels or the electrical grid. It allows you to use stored energy during peak demand times when electricity costs are high, which helps reduce your electric bill, saving you money. And when a power outage occurs, PowerCell is ready to supply backup power to your home. PowerCell's modular design allows for easy customization for any home or budget. And PowerCell is backed with a 10-year limited warranty.
It was a simple installation, very neatly installed. It was done very quickly and efficiently. Since installing our power system, we've been experiencing a savings of $1,500 a year.
Generac has been a trusted provider of backup power solutions since 1959 and provides 24/7 customer support.
The battery storage solution in combination with the solar has been one of the best investments we've ever made.
Special financing is available with low monthly payment options. You will likely qualify for tax credits and energy rebates, which could save you up to 30%, adding to the savings you'll enjoy over time with PowerCell. Call now to schedule a free in-home assessment. The call is free, the assessment is free, and there's no obligation to buy. Act now to receive PowerView, Generac's home energy monitoring system, a $300 value. With PowerView, easily keep tabs on your energy consumption, monitor your battery usage, and track your savings. Don't wait. Call or go online now. PowerCell, savings powered by the sun.
Do you worry about going to the dentist? After all, a visit to the dentist can easily cost $2,000 or more. Well, relax. The Carefree Dental Card is now available in your area. Call now and we'll send your actual card at no cost today. With the Carefree Dental Card, you go to the dentist whenever you need and you instantly pay a lot less. Activate your card and you can start using it immediately. From exams and cleanings to more expensive procedures like crowns, dentures, even braces, they're all included with the Carefree Dental Card. Say you go to the dentist today without any card and your bill is, well, ouch. Wait a minute, let's try that again. You go to the dentist today and show your Carefree Dental Card, you save $525. The Carefree Dental Card is just $15.95 a month, so call now and make going to the dentist carefree.
Call 1-800-478-0809 to receive your free Carefree Dental Card information kit. Call 1-800-478-0809 now.
Read. Read yourself past the junk, past the hashtags and the troll armies, the partisan pandering, past all the social media that's making your head feel like, past the gossip mags and millions of stories uploaded each day. Read yourself past the algorithms, because no one ever did anything big by reading small. Read yourself better.
It is 5 a.m. at CNBC Global Headquarters, and here is your 5 at 5. Coronavirus crisis mode. Factories at the epicenter of the outbreak struggling to reopen after an extended emergency holiday break. This as stock futures search for direction after Friday's triple-digit sell-off for the Dow. Still, though, a very good week. $4.8 trillion with a T. President Trump set to outline his latest budget proposal later on today. We are live in Washington, details with the latest there. Now, seeing pink at Sycamore, a massive retail deal reportedly in the making and exclusive to us over at CNBC. Those details coming up. And history in the making. At the 92nd Academy Awards, it is Monday, February 10th, 2020. Worldwide Exchange begins right now. Today for Brian Sullivan, we had history at the Oscars last night where South Korea's Parasite took top honors for Best Picture in a field that included legendary directors Quentin Tarantino and also Martin Scorsese. This is the first time in history a non-English language film claimed that top award. We've got more on that story throughout the course of the morning, but congratulations to Parasite. I will admit I have not seen it, but I am now intrigued about what that movie is all about. Well, here's how stock futures are looking this Monday morning. We've got at least a movement to the downside ever so slightly. 61 points is the implied open on the Dow to the downside if these futures moves hold into the opening bell. The S&P off by about 5 points and the Nasdaq jumped by just about 8. Remember, we had triple-digit moves yesterday in the Dow or on Friday to the downside. We'll see if that kind of carries over into today's trading. The bond market also a big focus. We're seeing a slight downtick to yields, ever so slight though. 1.57% the last trade for U.S. benchmark 10-year note yields. 2-year note yields 1.39% as well. Let us now go worldwide. We'll check the early trade in Europe where we are seeing red as well. You can see there the German DAX, the FTSE 100 in the UK, and the CAC in France, all pretty much in line, down about 0.5%. We are seeing some Nordic markets in the green, but for the most part, as you see there, red across the European continent. Let's check out what's happening in Asia. It was a bit mixed there overall as well. The Shanghai Composite was actually positive, 0.5% to the upside, but the Hang Seng in Hong Kong, that similar percentage move to the downside, and a similar 0.5% percentage move to the downside to close for the Nikkei in Japan as well. That brings us now to our top story this morning, where China is set to start getting back to work, though businesses across the country remain closed today despite the government's efforts to restart the economy after an extended holiday break over the coronavirus. 910 people are now dead, making the outbreak deadlier than the SARS epidemic back in 2003. More than 40,000 worldwide are also infected. The ripple effects across the business landscape are continuing as well. Factories operated by Foxconn, China's largest employer, and a major Apple contractor remain closed today after Chinese authorities reportedly rejected its proposal to resume operations, citing fears over that outbreak. Now this, as e-commerce giant Alibaba said it's extending its holiday break through February 16th or perhaps even later as well. Alibaba shares up about 0.25% in the extended trade. News this morning, Airbnb will also suspend its bookings in Beijing through the rest of February, citing the outbreak for coronavirus as a concern. And then Kia Motors says it's suspending production at South Korean plants due to parts shortages linked to the outbreak. So what does this all mean? Our own Eunice Yoon is monitoring the situation live in Beijing. So Eunice, as we talk about the movements for supply chain, technology and industrial manufacturing seems to be the most impacted. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. But you know what? A lot of factories in various industries are being impacted a lot. Today was supposed to be the day when all of China was supposed to go back to work. But for most, that didn't happen. And what the companies now are grappling with appears to be an uncoordinated restrictions as well as requirements that vary from province to province and city to city, and that at the end of the day are leading to a lot of factories being closed. So, for example, for the manufacturing powerhouse Guangdong province, the factories there are being asked to provide extensive preventive measures. Some are required to quarantine workers who are coming from other areas and also to source enough masks and goggles for every single worker. So it's only after they meet these requirements that the factories then would have to try to get approval from the local authorities to reopen. Also, some localities are outright delaying their production dates. So Guangdong, certain districts within Guangdong are encouraging a delay until March 1st. In Zhejiang province, another big manufacturing hub, the capital Wenzhou is delaying until February 17th. And in Henan, the capital Zhengzhou, which is where one of Foxconn's major iPhone factories are, they're delaying as late as February 24th, depending on how many migrant workers you have and where they all come from. So it's a really mixed bag in terms of the picture of what's happening around the country. That said, some factories did reopen today. I talked with Ford. They said today that they reopened their plants in Chongqing and Hangzhou. However, they did not open at full capacity. Tesla also reopened today. That was covered a lot in the state press. And in fact, the state press was showing how staff was being bussed into the Shanghai factory and that each staffer was taking up one row. And all of them, of course, were wearing masks. And I think, Dom, what this really shows us is that it is going to take a lot more time to figure out just how, whether at what point China gets back to normal.
All right, so back to normal. It's safe to say it's not going to happen anytime soon, given the trajectory of the coronavirus outbreak. There's also a sense right now that the People's Bank of China stands ready and willing to do whatever it takes, not to steal a Mario Draghi term here, but that they will do whatever is necessary to make sure that the economy stays as stable as it can be. Is there any movement on that front as well, from the government side of things or the central bank? Any chatter, any kind of commentary about whether or not they were going to add more liquidity to the system?
Well, as you had said, the central bank had made it quite clear that they are ready to and prepared to try to support the economy. If that means stimulus in terms of liquidity, then it's very likely that they would do so. Also, Beijing authorities have said that they have allocated $10 billion for the prevention and control of this virus. There's a lot of money that's being thrown at this problem from the top authorities because they want to make sure they get a handle on the situation, because they can understand, as we all well know, the economic fallout and the potential impact it could have around the world.
All right, Eunice Yoon live in Beijing with the latest on the coronavirus and the supply chain impacts. Thank you very much. Markets are now back to pre-coronavirus levels after last week's more than 3% rally for the S&P 500. For more now, I'm joined by Gina Sanchez, the CEO of Chantico Global. She's also a CNBC contributor. So Gina, have investors now priced in the lasting impact of this virus? And if so, it sure doesn't seem like they're that worried.
No, I don't think they have. If you compare coronavirus to SARS in terms of its impact to the Chinese economy, then you could expect the follow-on effect. Well, you have to expect that the impact could be larger at a time when Chinese growth is slower. When SARS hit, Chinese growth was significantly faster. And so now we're at a point where growth is slower, and it will take significant monetary stimulus to continue to prop up the economy. If you have factories shut down, if you have travel that's effectively been, contained and quarantined in various ways, cruise ships quarantined, that will have an impact. And that's going to have follow-on impacts to other markets. Anybody who's manufacturing in China, anybody who's importing from China, and quite frankly, all of the commodity markets that support all of this.
All right, so let's assume that there will be some kind of an impact, that the markets are not pricing this in. Where exactly will the rubber meet the road? Where will the most impact be felt What parts of the market? Is it macro? Is it treasuries, gold, interest rates, currencies, that sort of thing? Or are there specific parts, industries, stocks in the market that get hit hardest?
Well, there are parts of the market that get hit hardest are already getting hit. You've already seen oil take a tumble on the idea that Chinese growth, Chinese demand is going to be significantly lower. Industrial metals have had a massive impact in the last week on the back of this news, and they were already kind of in a weak space. Commodities weren't exactly in a great space to begin with, right? And so, energy companies that were supposed to have a big bounce this year just can't seem to get their feet under them. So you're already seeing significant impact. I think the places where we haven't really seen any impacts really is in the tech space, where you do have a lot of linkages, but growth continues to power forward, even in sort of these mixed times in the S&P. And so I think that's probably the place where it's really not very well valued. You still have very highly valued companies in the tech space that have significant linkages to this.
All right, so the latest there, technology could be a big impact there, and we'll watch those oil markets as well. Gina Sanchez, thank you very much. We always appreciate your thoughts here. When we come back on the show, a major retail deal reportedly in the making. We have the exclusive report coming up, plus history made across the Atlantic, and Boeing had a major role to play. A good story there. And then later on, breaking down the data with Fidelity, what their findings and data show and what it could mean for your portfolio or 401k. A very busy hour still ahead when Worldwide Exchange returns right after this.
One day I might maybe circle the light, but one day yes, I'm stuck in the middle with you.
No one likes to feel stuck, boxed in, or held back, especially by something like your cloud. It's a problem, but the IBM Cloud is different. It's the most open and secure public cloud for business. It can manage all your apps and data anywhere, so it can help take on anything, from rebooking flights on the fly to restocking shelves on demand, without getting in your way.
Make fitness routine with Pure Protein.
High protein, low sugar, tastes great.
High protein, low sugar, so good.
High protein, low sugar, birthday cake.
And try Pure Protein delicious protein shakes.
Pain can weigh you down, but you're resilient. And I see how lidocaine patch fuels your resilience. Powerful, targeted pain relief. Pain will not get the best of you. It will bring out the best in you. I see hot lidocaine patch.
Global economies feeling the spread of coronavirus fears. How could a slowdown in China impact U.S. markets? The moves investors should consider. Squawk on the Street, today, 9 a.m. Eastern. Watch and listen live on the CNBC app.
It's time to change the way you think about money. Personal stories, money tips, strategies for saving and investing. Invest in you. Ready, set, grow. CNBC and Acorns. Go to cnbc.com/invest.
This Six Nations don't do things by halves. Turn to The Telegraph for unrivaled insight from legends of the game. Join Sir Ian McGeechan, Brian Moore, Will Greenwood and other rugby greats to follow every dramatic moment. Subscribe to our sport package today from just £1 per week at telegraph.co.uk.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
All right, that's a live shot of Chicago, Illinois, where right now it is 4:13 a.m. Central Time. Windy a little bit there in the Windy City. Welcome back to the show. Let's get a look at some of the other top stories that we are following this morning. Kate Rogers is here with those. And Kate, there's a lot of news today.
A lot of news today. Good Monday morning, Dom. So China is warning France against treating Huawei differently from its European competitors when it comes to future 5G equipment contracts. In a statement released over the weekend, the Chinese embassy in Paris warned that a difference in treatment based on the country of origin would be considered, quote, blatant discrimination and disguised protectionism
mechanism. Now, the Justice Department is closing its antitrust investigation into Ford, Honda, BMW, and Volkswagen, saying it sees no evidence of collusion among the companies in connection to a July agreement with the four automakers and California for stricter tailpipe emissions. The Trump administration had said the state can't set its own emission standards. And finally, L Brands is nearing a deal to sell its Victoria's Secret brand to private equity firm Sycamore Partners in a deal that could be announced as soon as this week. People familiar with the matter told CNBC. No word yet on what leadership role L Brands CEO Les Wexner would have in such a deal. Wexner has been under mounting pressure due to his ties to the late sex criminal Jeffrey Epstein. He's also been criticized for the poor performance of the company's Victoria's Secret brand under his watch. Now, L Brands, of course, also owns the stronger performing Bath & Body Works personal care shop. A lot of news on the Victoria's Secret front, including that big New York Times investigation into the company culture as well.
Well, I mean, as you just saw there, and perhaps listeners didn't see that, the pre-market move on L Brands is up about, as you can see there, about 6% for those L Brand shares. Now, we would also point out from a contextual point of view, we're just looking at this right now. If you look over the last year-to-date, the year-to-date period is up 30%, but it's still down 12% over the course of the past 1 year or 12-month period. So there are a lot of investor worries about the future trajectory of L Brands, if you can see what's happening with L Brands.
Certainly, but not to be forgotten, Bath & Body Works is doing really well. We always talk about Victoria's Secret struggling, but that part of the business is better than expected performance.
Possible sale of L Brands.
Yeah.
Kate Rogers, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still on deck for the show, 20 years ago today, we take a look back at the rise and fall of one of the dot-com era's darlings and ask if history is doomed to repeat itself. Do you guys remember that sock puppet? Probably the most iconic sock puppet from the dot-com era.
Today's big number, 5.4%. That's JP Morgan's GDP growth forecast for China in 2020. The firm lowering its expectation due to disruptions caused by the coronavirus outbreak.
Racing has taken me all over the world, but when I put on the helmet, I am still in India. India, where I found yoga.
Slow down. Breathe.
I have breathed in India's magic. I have felt its warmth. Yoga has taught me the truth about life and motorcycles. That the more still you are, the further you can go.
Incredible India. Whether your beauty routine is 3 steps or 57, make Nature's Bounty Hair, Skin, and Nails Step 1. It's the #1 brand uniquely formulated for silky hair, glowing skin, and healthy nails. Nature's Bounty, because you're better off healthy.
Exploring the heart of historic Europe with Viking, you'll get closer to iconic landmarks, to local life and legendary treasures as you sail on board our patented, award-winning Viking longships. You'll enjoy many extras, including Wi-Fi, cultural enrichment from ship to shore, and engaging excursions. Viking, voted #1 river cruise line by Condé Nast readers. Learn more at vikingcruises.com.
Be My Valentine. Diamond earrings just $69. Stackable bands $129. 3-stone rings $169. Half carat $499. 1 carat $799. And 1 carat studs $599. Thousands of items guaranteed to appraise for double. The Jewelry Exchange Direct.
Imagine traveling hassle-free with your golf clubs. Now you can with ShipSticks.com. No more lugging your clubs through the airport or risk having your clubs lost or damaged by the airlines. Sending your own clubs ahead with ShipSticks.com makes it fast and easy to get to your golf destination. With just a few clicks or a phone call, we'll pick up and deliver your clubs on time, guaranteed, for as low as $39.99. ShipSticks.com saves you time and money. Make it simple. Make it ShipSticks.
For the Bulls last week, We closed it off with red. We're starting this week off with red again. The Dow down by about 65 points at these gains or losses holding the opening bell. The S&P down by 5. Coming up on the show, Democratic presidential hopefuls are storming New Hampshire today ahead of that state's primary tomorrow. What investors need to know and understand about that race when Worldwide Exchange comes right back after this.
How's the IT department liking the Now platform?
Every time it takes care of something for us, we celebrate.
How often does Got it.
ServiceNow, the smarter way to workflow.
Read yourself past the millions and millions of stories uploaded each day, past the endless memes, past all the social media that's making your head feel like. Read yourself better.
Wondering which credit card is right for you? Introducing CNBC Select, the authority on all things credit cards. We do the research, you reap the rewards. Head on over to cnbc.com/select.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Unmistakable. New York City. From the second you first hear it, like the soundtrack to your favorite film played live. After 7 dream-filled days at sea to do as much or as little as you please. And then you're awake, Brooklyn-bound, sailing silently beneath bridges as the skyline rises from the Hudson to meet you. Bask on your balcony and take your coffee with cream as Lady Liberty welcomes you to the city that never sleeps. That's a world away. That's the transatlantic crossing by Cunard. Discover more at cunard.com. APTA and atoll protected.
Welcome back to Worldwide Exchange. Let's get a check on this morning's other top headlines. NBC's Philip Mena live in the New York newsroom with the latest. Good Monday morning, Philip.
Hey, Dom. Good Monday morning to you. Democrats are lacing up this morning for a final sprint across the Granite State. With just 24 hours left to win over voters in New Hampshire, the presidential hopefuls are campaigning around the clock for the nation's first primary. According to the Boston Globe's final tracking poll released overnight, Bernie Sanders has a commanding lead at 27% support. Pete Buttigieg is in second at 19%. Amy Klobuchar surging to third after a strong debate performance on Friday night. NASA's solar orbiter successfully lifted off from Florida's Cape Canaveral overnight. This marks another step in the quest to unlock the secrets of the sun. This one-of-a-kind probe is designed to survive temperatures of more than 1,000 degrees. The goal here is to send back the first images of the sun's north and south poles. And feast your eyes on one of nature's wonders, a waterfall defying gravity by flowing in reverse. You can see the winds whipping water up and over those hills. This is happening in Sydney, Australia. It's caused by a trifecta of strong winds, torrential rain, and flooding. Tom, back to you.
Stunning footage for sure. Great video. Philip Mena, thank you very much for that update. Well, straight ahead on the show, we are live in our nation's capital with the latest budget figures from the White House, plus instant market reaction to those numbers and why a new version of Back to the Future is going viral with a little help from Elon Musk. Yes, Elon Musk. And then later on, breaking down the data with fidelity, insight and analysis you won't find anywhere else. All of that coming up. Keep it right here on Worldwide Exchange.
Can I find an investment firm that has a truly long-term view? It begins by being privately owned, with more than 85 years of experience over multiple market cycles. With portfolio managers who are encouraged to do what's right over what's popular, focused on helping me achieve my investors' unique goals. Can I find an investment firm that gets long-term the way I do? With Capital Group, I can. Talk to your advisor or consultant for investment risks and information.
My dental problems started as a child. Had a lot of cavities, root canals. Eating anything cold, it would hurt so bad. With dentures, they never fit properly. My confidence was really down. Always covering my face when I laughed. So I went in for a free consultation with Clear Choice.
People come in with bad teeth or no teeth, and in one day leave with the smile that they are looking for.
The Clear Choice one-day approach is making dental implants a reality for people all over the country who suffer from missing or failing teeth.
They put these beautiful teeth in my mouth, and I can eat ice cream. I can eat corn on the cob now.
With over 30,000 new smiles across our network, we're lifting spirits and confidence all over America. Schedule your free consultation today. We'll even talk about financing options.
I've never felt better than I do right now. It's the best thing I've ever done in my life for myself. Everybody tells me, you look 10 years younger. Thank you, Clear Choice.
Call Clear Choice today.
The world's newest ocean cruise line is yet again a world's best. Viking's elegant ships deliver a superb, inclusive experience with enriching shore excursions, alternative dining, all-veranda staterooms, Wi-Fi, and much more. We're very proud to have been named a world's best 4 years in a row by Travel + Leisure readers. Learn more at vikingcruises.com.
I'm feeling good.
Make the most of your business card with Vistaprint.
I'm feeling good.
And now, get free shipping on all business cards. Any style, any quantity. With promo code BCNOW. Own the now with Vistaprint.
Yes, it's the first word of any new discovery. But when allergies attack, the excitement fades. Allegra helps you say yes with the fastest non-drowsy allergy relief and turn any half-hearted yes into an all-in yes. Allegra, live your life, not your allergies.
Investors facing whiplash this morning as stocks search for direction to kick off the new trading week. Big losses, remember, to close out last week. President Trump set to unveil his $4.8 trillion budget proposal, aiming to slash social programs and roll out more tax cuts. We are live in Washington, D.C. with the details there. And a historic night at the Oscars with a stunning win in the Best Picture category. A big news there. The second half of World on Exchange starts right now. And here's how your money and investments are looking as we are halfway through the 5 a.m. Eastern Time hour. Stock futures, as you can see there, down by about 59 points. That's the implied open for the Dow. If these moves hold into regular cash equities trading, the S&P would fall by 5 points and the Nasdaq would fall by just about 7 to 8. Taking a look now at the bond market, we are seeing a slight tick lower in yields as well. The benchmark U.S. 10-year Treasury note yield currently just a hair below 1.57%. The 2-year benchmark Treasury note yield just about 1.38, 1.39% at this stage. Let's check on the Asian markets now. Japan, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. It was a bit of a mixed session, as you can see there. The Nikkei in Japan and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong both down by about 0.5%. Meanwhile, mainland China with the Shanghai Composite up about 0.5% to close out the day. But you can see with the map, more red than green, China the lone standout there. Let's swing that globe around to what's happening with the European trade, because we are seeing similar percentage moves across most of the major bourses out there in Europe. The German DAX, the FTSE 100 in the UK, and the CAC in France, all down by almost 0.5% at this stage. The notable green markets there, we do see Sweden and Italy flashing some positivity in the European trade. Well, President Trump is set to unveil his election year budget proposal later on today with a $4.8 trillion price tag. CNBC's Ilan Moy joins us now with more. And Ilan, what can you tell us about this particular budget and how will it resonate with economists and investors out there?
Well, Dom, as you said, the White House will release its annual budget today, and $4.8 trillion is not the only big number. The White House is projecting that the economy will grow at an average rate of 3% for the next 15 years. Now, that is almost double the forecast from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. It's expecting growth to clock in at about 1.6 or 1.7%. So the key difference is that the Trump administration's budget makes three big assumptions. First, that there's another big tax cut. The White House has a $1.4 trillion placeholder in its budget for what could eventually become Tax Cuts 2.0. Second, it assumes that interest rates remain low despite the stronger economy. And third, the administration is proposing $4.4 trillion in spending reductions over a decade, with about half of that coming from changes to popular social safety net programs. Now, the White House says those spending cuts, coupled with its rosy economic forecast, will allow it to eventually eliminate our trillion-dollar deficit. But, Dom, even the Trump administration acknowledges that can't happen in a decade. The White House budget takes 15 years to balance. Back over to you.
All right, so Ilan, can you? I mean, we've seen some of the initial numbers and the initial framework or outline of this. What are some of the points that could be the most contentious with regard to how it'll play out with lawmakers in Washington, D.C.?
Well, certainly the president's border wall has been one of the issues that has led to a government shutdown in the past. In this budget, the president is also going to be looking for $2 billion in order to build the border wall. So that could potentially be a poison pill in any negotiations in the future. But I think also just sort of broadly, this budget, the amount that the president is expecting to spend on discretionary programs, that number is less than the amount the president had agreed to with Democrats just last year. So Democrats are already saying that the president is reneging on his promises. Now, we know that the White House budget is typically just a vision statement. It's not something that is an actual working policy document, but it does tell you where the president's priorities are heading into this election year.
All right, Ilan Moy with the latest there with the budget talks and the budget proposal being put out there by President Trump. Thank you very much. Let's get more reaction to President Trump's new budget proposal. Joining me now, Tim Seymour, Chief Investment Officer of Seymour Asset Management. He's also a CNBC contributor and fast money trader. So let's talk about the budget.
Don.
Good morning, Tim. You saw some of the reports. You've seen Ilan's story. What exactly does Wall Street, what exactly do economists think is the actual benefit or drawback from these initial budget proposals?
Well, first of all, talking about 3% GDP for the next 15 years is pretty extraordinary, because the greatest economy of all time has never printed 3% under this administration. So if you think about the world we live in today, you know, the reality is that and maybe this isn't germane to a long-term tax discussion, but GDP estimates are being cut for the United States as well, even though significantly less than the rest of the world. And if you listen to Bruce Kasman at J.P. Morgan, who I do, the global economy is going to be 1.3% in Q1. And so we know the headwinds from coronavirus, but I think the reality is projecting out GDP in the context of talking about really that $1.4 trillion tax cut holder billion dollar tax cut holder is a very important dynamic for Wall Street. It's a very important dynamic for thinking about the markets and the construct of the current administration into a political season when the market hasn't priced in anyone but Trump at this point. So I think this is more fuel for at least the current environment where, with the Fed sitting where they are and the administration sitting where they are, it's Wall Street positive.
All right, $1.4 trillion reserved for tax cuts is certainly a big deal. We'll see if that can jumpstart any kind of the economy at this stage right now. Another big story for investors today, Tim, is the coronavirus. It has been for weeks and if not months now. China is attempting to get back to work in some way, although some businesses remain closed despite the government's efforts to restart commerce and industry following that extended Lunar New Year holiday. More than 900 people have now died from the virus, making the outbreak deadlier than the SARS epidemic back in 2003. Sources say Foxconn's factory in Shenzhen remains closed after Chinese authorities rejected its request to resume operations. Foxconn, remember, a key manufacturer in the supply chain for Apple. So, is the economic impact right now on not just China but the world perhaps being understated if the technology and industrial supply chain, Tim, cannot get back up to speed in a short amount of time?
Right, and so that's the question, Dom. I mean, what are we talking about? Because I think the status quo has a dramatic rebound by March. We know that February was probably worse than expected, and again, getting back to either estimates of the global economy, but looking specifically into the supply chain, we know we have significant disruption for February, and the timeline right now, I would say that stocks have priced that in. If you think about, in other words, they've basically shrugged and said we don't see a long-term impact. If you look at the performance of semiconductors, if you look at the SOX, if you look at the SMH, however you're tracking this, you can see that it's been very sympathetic on kind of the headline days, but that for the most part we haven't really seen the kind of a correction that tells you that people think this is anything more than a hiccup. I think if I think about my experience investing in SARS, investing in Asia specifically back in 2002, 2003, that's what people should do. And I think if you think about the context of global markets that were priced to perfection coming into this without this expectation and without a sense that this could be something more than, look, this has been a tragedy of global proportions, certainly in China, and we don't know the extent of it. But the expectation is that this is a short-term hiccup.
All right, and semiconductors as an industry somewhat underperforming the broader market, at least with the S&P 500, Tim. One more thing before we let you go. On Tim, because on this day in history, 2 decades ago, a little-known company made its public market debut.
We're coming to you from one crazy dog park. Now that you can get whatever you want at pets.com, it's like Mardi Gras. Don't give up.
Pets.com, yes, the sock puppet. That stock, Pets.com, surged some 30% on its first day of trading to more than $14 a share. Fast forward just 8 months from then, the stock would be at $1, and by November, the company would be out of money, would be forced to shut down, bankrupt. Take us back to that day, and if you see any signs of something bubbly or similar today, is it fair to call any part of the market today akin to what it was back in the mid to late 1990s?
Poor Pets.com. I mean, we do this over and over again, and it's a relevant comparison for markets that if you look at price to sales ratios or even PE ratios, we are back to those go-go days. You have a very different construct. Look, people that talk about the multiple of the S&P are able to show a lower rate environment and a lower discount rate and start to draw many different fundamental structural reasons why we could still be okay here. I think if you look at the earnings profile of Q4, we had a dynamic for some of the mega cap tech stocks that said, hey, a lot of these guys mostly beat on both the top and the bottom line, and they're certainly taking market share, and that you're actually seeing the core of the NASDAQ 100. And if you think about Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon, you have almost 30% of that, and those three companies actually probably warrant the multiples that they trade at. And I know that's kind of tough to say about Amazon. I think stocks are largely priced to perfection because central banks are able to do to markets what they can't necessarily do to economies. And we're going to go into a period here where we've already started to see the central bank reaction to the coronavirus. I think equities are going to continue to rally from this. It doesn't mean that I think that they should be disregarding the references to Pets.com and sock puppets. I think we have a case here where as long as the central banks are stirring this punch bowl, that's the issue. And look, on Wednesday, we have Jerome Powell with the semi-annual Humphrey Hawkins testimony, and I think we have to listen every time the Fed speaks, even though I don't think the Fed in the short run is going to be talking about taking away that punch bowl. Central banks are the reason stocks are trading at this level. We didn't have the central bank ingredient back in the dot-com boom, and I think investors need to think about that. That's the most important thing, and central banks feel as if they're supposed to support markets here. That's not my view of what they should do, but that is what they are doing.
All right. Well, we'll see if investors or traders choose to try to fight the Fed this time around. Tim Seymour, CIO over at Seymour Asset Management. Thank you very much. Always great to hear your thoughts. Well, let's get a look at some of the other top stories that we are following today. Kate Rogers is here with those. Kate, toys, fun, and games.
We will kick it off with Mattel. Dom, hi again. So Mattel is reportedly looking to reduce its manufacturing operations in an effort to cut costs. According to the Wall Street Journal, the company plans to close a factory in Canada sometime this year after shuttering 2 in Asia last year. Mattel had also previously announced plans to close and sell a factory in Mexico. The move is a part of Mattel's plan to stabilize amid continuing weak sales. Puerto Rico has struck a deal with bondholders to reduce the size of its debt amid efforts to exit bankruptcy. Officials announced yesterday the island had reached the agreement to restructure $35 billion of debt obligations. That will help to reduce the debt by about $24 billion. Puerto Rico began defaulting on some of its debts back in 2015. And Amazon and Sony are the latest companies to pull out of the Mobile World Congress. Both companies are citing coronavirus-related concerns for the decisions. LG, Nvidia, and Ericsson have also pulled out. That event is set to take place later this month in Barcelona. It will be really interesting to see how many companies wind up going. As concerns about the virus continue to escalate.
All right, big stories there, Kate Rogers. Thank you very much. Well, coming up in the show, Hollywood's historic night as new ground is broken during the 92nd Annual Academy Awards. We'll go live to Los Angeles for a full recap of the night's big winners, all those Oscars, when Worldwide Exchange returns after this.
How do they know when to change their tires? How are you popping me? Got it. How do you even write during homework? How does it know where to go? What's up, Mom? Are you serious? She got a ticket? How do you get tickets?
A hard 20 after a hard day isn't for everyone.
Got this, Peloton.
Waking up before the sun isn't for everyone.
You're almost there. Stay with me.
This isn't for everyone.
Peloton, let's go.
But at $58 a month,
Don't give up. Come on.
Peloton is for anyone who wants it.
Musculoskeletal conditions represent 16% of the cost of healthcare for a large employer.
People are either absent or they are present, but they're not performing to their potential.
By treating musculoskeletal disease more effectively, the gains to an employer are quite large.
Our goal is to provide the most efficient care by giving a patient the correct diagnosis, the correct intervention, with the least complications. We think that's the most efficient way to deliver care.
Yes, I'm stuck in the middle with you.
No one likes to feel stuck, boxed in, or held back, especially by something like your cloud. It's a problem, but the IBM Cloud is different. It's the most open and secure public cloud for business. It can manage all your apps and data anywhere, so it can help take on anything, from rebooking flights on the fly to restocking shelves on demand, without getting in your way.
Welcome back. That's a live shot right in Manhattan, New York City, from 30 Rock. You can see the flags there just around the vicinity of the ice rink over there. Well, the tight labor market is affecting industries across the country, and the Department of Veterans Affairs Administration is no exception. The agency is tasked with caring for the nation's 19 million veterans, and it currently has some 3,000 job openings posted on a usajobs.com website, ranging from custodians to human resources and, of course, primary care physicians. Our Kate Rogers has a look at a new program that could help stem the bleeding with regard to finding qualified people to work. What exactly is the government and the VA going to do to bridge the gap?
And this interesting program has come from a first-year Harvard med student named Seamus Carragher, who really feels the weight of caring for the nation's veterans.
When someone lets you know that they, put the flag on their shoulder and join the military for our country, I think you feel even that extra little bit of desire to make sure that you're there for them.
Before arriving at Harvard, Carragher and two of his undergraduate classmates envisioned a shadowing program for aspiring doctors at VA medical centers. The trio took their idea to Capitol Hill, where it became a bill now known as the Vet HP Act, which aims to help future med students get the real-life clinical experience needed for med school applications and later keep them attuned to veteran-specific needs in their medical careers. For the VA, the program opens a much-needed pipeline to future healthcare providers. The VA is working to offer expanded care to veterans beyond that bill with the Mission Act, which offers vets the ability to seek care outside of the VA system, integrating the VA into the wider U.S. healthcare system, which the VA says has now helped 1.7 million vets obtain care in less than a year. But more doctors are needed nationwide.
Our biggest challenge is to find those doctors and nurses out there who would be happy coming to work with us. But in lieu of that, we have to create a network whereby we touch every area of American health to find those folks that we can use to get our veterans taken care of.
Now, the VA has reported as many as 49,000 vacancies, but is just about 3,000 workers short of full staffing per congressional appropriations. VA Secretary Wilkie says, adding that veteran access to care and health care outcomes are better indicators of adequate staffing. The VA does offer bonuses and covers relocation expenses to help recruitment efforts in this tight labor market, but the same talent crunch that's affecting the entire country, of course, is also hitting the VA.
So let us kind of help us understand this better. Is this a VA-specific issue with regard to finding qualified, and I'm speaking of just doctors and nurses, qualified medical care professionals, or is this a broader macro picture in the U.S. with regard to just a shortage of medical professionals? Which is the more important aspect here with regard to how it's going to impact the VA?
That's a great question. So the doctor shortage nationwide is something that we have been covering in this series. Projections say we could be short over 120,000 primary care physicians across the country by 2032, and that's a multi-pronged issue. Obviously, we're living longer, the population is aging, but also the current cohort of doctors that are working are also aging out of the system because there are a lot of retirements. So that's hitting the VA. We did speak to Secretary Wilkie. He said obviously mental health care professionals and also PCPs are really his big focus. And so the Mission Act obviously would allow vets to seek that care outside of the system, which puts less strain on the system. But the big answer is we need more doctors across the board.
Big demographic story for trends for sure. Kate Rogers, stick around. Okay. We got some more here. It was a historic night in Hollywood with new ground being broken at the 92nd Annual Academy Awards. NBC News' Jennifer Bjorklund joins us now from Los Angeles. And Jennifer, please take us through what was the big deal last night. And it was a lot of history being made.
It was definitely history being made right here in Hollywood, Dom. Call it an action movie, a comedy, drama, thriller, horror show. Basically, Parasite, that satirical South Korean movie, made history, becoming the first foreign language film to win Best Picture. That was the history-making moment last night. It capped a night that saw that film, Parasite, win 3 other Oscars as well, starting with Best International Film, Original Screenplay, and Best Director for Bong Joon-ho. There were no surprises in the acting categories, though. That was it would have been a huge upset if we hadn't seen Joaquin Phoenix winning his first Oscar as Best Actor, title role in Joker. It was a second Oscar for Renee Zellweger. She won Best Actress for playing film legend Judy Garland in Judy. And in the supporting categories, Laura Dern won Best Supporting Actress for Marriage Story. She saluted her actor parents, Bruce Dern and Diane Ladd, who were in the audience. And Brad Pitt had the crowd just roaring and on their feet as he walked up to accept supporting actor honors for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was one of those magical nights here in Hollywood where the silver screen ruled. Netflix came in strong with 24 nominations. They only walked away with 2 Oscars. Dom?
All right, Jennifer, thank you very much for that. Now, Kate, I just want to turn to you. You're a movie buff. Have you seen Parasite? Have you seen any of the other films out there? I know that you're a Batman person, so did you watch Joker?
So, of course, I saw Joker. I saw Marriage Story. I thought that was fantastic. I have not yet seen Parasite. I can't wait to see it. All of the buzz has only made me want to see it more. But, I had to go to bed early, Dom. So I saw Brad Pitt win. I thought Laura Dern was amazing in Marriage Story. But I have a lot more to see. And, of course, Joaquin Phoenix was fantastic.
All right, so then what goes to the top of your queue? What are you seeing first after seeing what happened at the Oscars?
I think I have to see Parasite. What about you?
Me too. I think I have to see it, and not just because of anything else, but because it's crazy to know that South Korea just overall has become such more of a pop culture center these days, and now the Academy Awards just bears it out.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Kate, while we have you here, you're doing a lot of work today.
It's my pleasure to hang out with you all morning.
I know. I love this. What else are we going to be talking about today? What's trending for us?
So first off, a British Airways flight just made history, Dom. The airliner's New York City to London route broke the record for the fastest subsonic, or slower than the speed of light, flight between the two cities. According to Flight Radar, the Boeing 747 plane used in the flight reached travel speeds of more than 800 miles per hour, completing the trip in just under 5 hours, nearly 2 hours faster than expected and about 20 minutes faster than the previous record holder. Flight Radar says the wind and air currents at the time of the trip were ideal for a speedy flight. You know, my big question as someone who travels all the time is how long did they sit on the runway? Because that, 2 hours, like I could spend 2 hours just waiting to take off, right?
Well, okay, so no sonic booms. They didn't travel faster than the speed of sound. Forget all of that stuff. How about some good press for Boeing and a Boeing plane for once?
I mean, you're not kidding. I don't know how I feel about this. I guess, air travel, you do want it to be faster. That seems very fast. Like, is this safe? What do you think?
I kind of want them to bring back the Concorde. That's just me.
Yeah?
Well, speaking of fast, right?
Yeah, true. Well, let's move on to this one. The DeLorean is known as the iconic car from Back to the Future, of course, but a Toronto-based virtual effects team has given the scene in which Doc Brown first tested his time machine a new and exciting twist. This version swaps the DeLorean for Tesla's Cybertruck. And the switch does look pretty seamless. So Tesla CEO Elon Musk actually says that Back to the Future was one of several 80s movies he channeled for inspiration when designing that pickup. So he probably thinks that's pretty cool, right?
That looks pretty awesome. I want to know how much of this is the slight conspiracy theorist in me, says how much of this was maybe or maybe not funded by perhaps Elon Musk himself or Tesla.
A little good press for Tesla, too, after all the ups and downs last week, right?
Or throwing a metal ball at the window and having it break.
I think it is pretty cool, though, because that does look right out of the 80s, right? Absolutely. It perfectly fits with Back to the Future.
Right, so. I'm a child of the 80s myself. Kate Rogers, thank you very much for that. Well, still on deck for the show, Samsung's highly anticipated foldable phone makes a surprise appearance during last night's Oscars. And a reminder, you can always watch or listen to us live on the go on the CNBC app. Worldwide Exchange is back in just a moment. Did you go to work or just go to the store?
The Dacia Duster has won what car? Best family SUV less than £20,000 for the second year running. Time to roll out the fanfare. Starting from only $10,995, our prices are pretty modest, just like our celebrations. Visit dacia.co.uk to find out more about our range of award-winning cars. Dacia, you do the maths.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maltesers presents If Dating App Chats Were Real Life Chats.
Amber, damn, you hot. Glad we matched.
Me too. You're definitely my type.
I gotta ask, did it hurt?
I'll see where this is going.
When you fell from heaven, Amber? Yo, Amber, 'cause you're an angel.
Snore. Ditch the apps this Valentine's and swipe yourself some Maltesers.
Feeling the spread of coronavirus fears. How could a slowdown in China impact U.S. markets? The moves investors should consider. Squawk on the Street, today, 9 a.m. Eastern. Watch and listen live on the CNBC app.
When you run a con on anybody, even your own mother, that's American greed. All new episode, tonight, 10 Eastern, CNBC.
Industries like banking, like healthcare, like oil, like gas, like pharmaceuticals. I mean, they feel safe. They have an easier time enriching the shareholders. For better or worse, Trump has doubled down on government by, for, and of the stock market. Watch or listen live on the CNBC app.
Welcome back. Time for the executive recap. The headlines you need in 60 seconds. Google is being accused of competition abuse over its vacation rental search engine. According to the Financial Times, 34 companies, including TripAdvisor and Expedia, have sent a letter to the European Union's Competition Commission accusing Google of elevating its own rental searches. The accusation comes as Google prepares to appeal an antitrust fine before Europe's second highest court. Well, Samsung offered a glimpse at its new foldable phone during last night's Academy Awards. In the surprise ad, the world's top smartphone maker showcased the Galaxy Flip Z phone. The device is set to be officially unveiled at an event in San Francisco tomorrow. And L Brands is close to a deal to sell Victoria's Secret. Sources tell CNBC that the deal with private equity firm Sycamore Partners could be announced as soon as this week. Those sources stress that terms are still being negotiated and that the potential deal could fall apart or be delayed. Well, turning back to the markets now, futures pointing to some caution at the open as investors monitor the latest coronavirus developments. The Dow right now slated to open up, actually down by just 10 points. That's an improvement. The S&P is opening up just about flat and the NASDAQ up by about 12 points. That's a bit of an acceleration to the upside in the last half hour. This as investors look ahead to another busy week of earnings reports with nearly 60 S&P 500 companies reporting. Joining me now is Denise Chisholm, sector strategist with Fidelity Investments. Denise, it's great to have you here this morning. Let's talk numbers because you crunch a lot of them. Are we seeing a market that has some legs to keep going higher, or are we due for a pullback?
So I think earnings is going to be the key driver in 2020 after some of the dislocations and rare signals that we saw in 2019. So that's the key indicator that I'm watching. And two of the leading indicators for earnings growth have turned in the last, let's call it 3 to 6 months. The first being the OECD Leading Economic Index, and the second, which is a little more significant, which is the Small Business Survey and the number of companies actually expecting earnings growth to inflect higher. Both of those actually suggest a re-acceleration in earnings growth after the poor earnings growth that we've seen over the last year. And most importantly to the market, as much as we want to focus on what it will re-accelerate to, what's very clear in history is that inflections matter more than the overall level. Even if you had perfect foresight and knew what earnings growth was going to be, as long as it was positive, they all still carry 75% odds of an advancing market. But this inflection that some of the leading indicators are suggesting actually carries 90% odds of an advancing market over the next year. So that could give this equity market legs over 2020.
All right, could, but 90% sounds pretty darn certain at this point, a 9 out of 10 odds. Is this a scenario where the numbers are actually going to back up this notion that earnings growth and everything else, a macro environment, can see the stock market keep going for quite some time?
Right. So it's interesting when you talk about the macro market, macro economy. When I look at the numbers historically, what you see is despite the fact that GDP didn't contract, if earnings reaccelerates, even if GDP didn't contract and doesn't reaccelerate, you still see, when I look at the sectors through a sector lens, you still see defense like consumer staples, utilities, healthcare, and to a lesser extent, the old telecommunication services industries. You see very low odds. So despite the fact that even we can talk about the market, but a rotation back to those economically sensitive sectors out of defense actually seems likely throughout the course of 2020.
All right, so if this rotation pans out, we know that there are rich valuations in some of these defensive-oriented sectors here, but there are also rich valuations in places like technology, industrials, other places as well. What exactly then does the sector outlook feel like in the next year or two, given those numbers that you just cited?
Right. So I still see the severe dislocations that we saw in 2019 persistent. That was one of the key drivers, even though that were rare signals of the upmarket in 2019. So defense, as you mentioned, again, consumer staples, utilities, healthcare, and telco aggregated together were in their top decile of relative valuation since 1970. And that's had decisive historical odds of a rotation back to cyclicals. As much as you've seen that come off a little, we're still in the top decile range, which is still supportive of cyclicals. Now, technology technology, again, an economically sensitive sector. When I look at the valuation relative to history, relative to the market, what I see is a very unique setup. It's still below average on earnings and free cash flow, but still with top decile EBIT margins or operating margins. So technology is still a sector where you're actually getting value relative to history for some of the best fundamentals the sector has actually put up historically.
All right, Denise, we just got about 30 seconds left here. What derails that bullish thesis, that 90% odds that things keep going higher?
I think inflation is one of the key indicators to watch because that is what allowed the Fed to actually shift this cycle positive versus other cycles after prior yield curve inversions. What you saw is the Fed hike interest rates. The Fed lowering interest rates 3 times may stimulate, if history is a guide, bank lending standards out to 2020, supportive of job growth to extend the economic cycle and continue the rotation back to cyclicals.
All right, Denise Chisholm at Fidelity, thank you very much for those sector insights. Great data. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that does it for Worldwide Exchange this morning. An acceleration in futures. Squawk Box begins right now.
Good morning. Outbreak escalating. The coronavirus death toll is now above 900 as businesses in China extend with work stoppages. We're going to take you live to Beijing.
And sources tell CNBC that L Brands is nearing a deal to sell its flagship Victoria's Secret brand. We've got details on the transaction straight ahead.
A Parasite making history with its Best Picture win at last night's Oscars. Do we feel bad for Netflix? I don't know. We're going to show you which studios were the big winners. It's Monday, February 10th, 2020, and Squawk Box begins right now.
Good morning. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market side of Times Square. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Joe Kernan and Mike Santoli. Becky's off today. Stephanie Link is here for the hour. She, of course, is a CNBC contributor, giving us all her views.
Among other things. I mean, that's not her. Doesn't define her.
Well, it's her highest. It's her highest. Might be her highest.
I don't know what
it's
most
proud.
I'm most proud.
Highest ranking, highest calling, all of that.
Good answer.
Take a look at U.S. equity futures, folks. The Dow looks like it would open off about 9.5 points right now. The S&P 500, we'll call it unch to a little up, maybe about a point up, and the NASDAQ looking to open about 12 points up. We'll also throw the board around and show you the 10-year right now. Treasury yields at this moment, you can look at the 10-year note at 1.578.
You know who else?
And welcome back.
Thank you.
To the East Coast.
Thank you. It's warmer here.
What was your score?
Absolutely beautiful.
Can you give us just a brief update?
I maintained, I stayed in the red. My pro was even, but it was difficult for me to play.
It's a difficult game.
Well, difficult for me to play well. I guess that sums up. It's hard to get up at 1 in the morning and do the show and then go play Pebble in front of people. But they saw some really things no one should see that they did. We're going to talk about something very serious now. We'll get back to that because I want to tell you I saw one of our old friends there. Yeah.
It's a good tease.
Jay-Z.
Did you?
I don't mean Jay-Z, and I mean Jeff Zucker.
Oh.
And I played with him, and he made the cut. The short game was, he's a competitive person. Have you noticed that?
He's a competitive person.
Anyway, that was just one of the things that we may talk about more. But first, what I was saying was Stephanie's a CNBC contributor. You know who else is a CNBC contributor? Dr. Scott Gottlieb.
Yes, he is.
How happy are we that we get to talk to him again this morning, because this coronavirus, here's the latest update. 910 people are dead. That's making the outbreak deadlier than that of the SARS epidemic in 2003. More than 40,000 people worldwide are now infected, and the ripple effect is across the business landscape as well. That's one of the things we cover, and you're seeing it. Factories operated by Foxconn, China's largest employer, and a major Apple contractor remain closed today after Chinese authorities reportedly rejected its proposal to resume operations, citing fears over the outbreak. And e-commerce giant Alibaba is extending its holiday break through February 16th or later. Airbnb is suspending its bookings in Beijing, in this case through the rest of February because of the outbreak. The company says it will refund canceled reservations. And Kia Motors is suspending production at its South Korean plant due to plant shortages. linked to the outbreak, Eunice Yoon, continuing to do great work for us. She's monitoring the situation live in Beijing. Eunice, what can you tell us?
Well, Joe, companies are dealing now with a conflicting tangle of policies that vary from province to province and city to city that, for the most part, are keeping a lot of factories closed. So most factories now are being required to provide prevention measures, and very strict ones. So, for example, factories need to quarantine workers that come in from other areas, so migrant workers, and also to source enough masks and goggles for every single worker. And it was only after they have these restrictions in place that they can actually apply to the local authorities to reopen. So some areas are also putting in outright production date delays as late as March 1st. And that said, some factories did reopen today. I was speaking to the folks over at Ford today, and they said that their plants in Chongqing and Hangzhou have resumed operations, though they are not running at full capacity. Also, Tesla reopened its Shanghai factory. The local media had spotted staff going into the facilities in a bus wearing masks, as well as all security people there. Chinese tech names also being very cautious. Most of them are asking their staff to work from home at least for another week or two. And I think all of this just shows that the situation here is not going to go back to normal for quite some time.
Yeah, thank you. Eunice, just being on the ground there, is there any feeling that we're approaching what people are looking for in terms of the peak, and then it starts to subside from there? Or are we still on an up? So there's no way to know, I guess. Is there, Eunice?
It's really difficult to know because, it's not as though the situation, most people are focused on what the situation in Wuhan. And so the epicenter of the outbreak, and the stories that are coming out of there sound even worse than before. And so because the situation is so dire there, a lot of the focus has been on, just how bad the spread is going to be. Over the weekend, a lot of the hospitals were sending staff to Wuhan to try to get a handle on the situation. There's also been a lot of concern about the communities outside of Wuhan. So there's some smaller cities now that are getting badly infected, and there's a lot of talk about their lockdowns in these cities, and that these cities don't have the infrastructure, the health care infrastructure that Wuhan has. So that's really worrying people about the spread of this virus.
Do we know how many people have left Wuhan and like a diaspora all over the world? I saw this, I don't know, I didn't go into the article itself, but that there are a lot of people that are left that are unaccounted for that may be all over China or actually in other parts of the world. Do we know that?
Well, we know what the mayor had said from Wuhan. He had said that he believed 5 million people had left. So this was because of the Lunar New Year holiday, and also once they heard about the lockdown. So we know that there are millions of people from Wuhan who have been traveling around, and that's, again, most of them probably are in China, but it's right. Something that's worrying a lot of the people here because it's just seen as so contagious.
I was amazed at how recent everything is. We're talking a matter of weeks, and it seems like we've been talking for a while. So you would hope maybe when that 14-day incubation period is up, a lot of the people that left, either there are pockets of Wuhan or of coronavirus that you're going to see, or there aren't. So maybe we'll get some more clarity in the next couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, but I think what is also concerning people here is that it looks as though the virus is moving person to person. Also, there are some reports that in Europe, there could be a situation of a super spreader where there was one person there's a group of people in Europe that looks like they became infected by a British national who was traveling to Singapore, and that none of them actually had gone to China. So because it just seems to be jumping from human to human, we don't really know the extent of the spread. in China. And that's, again, what people are worried about here, despite the fact that the government continuously says that things are largely under control. In fact, President Xi Jinping was featured very heavily in the state press tonight, traveling around a hospital in Beijing to show that China has the situation contained.
Okay. All right, Eunice, thank you. And we're going to talk to Dr. Scott Gottlieb. If you have any questions, or anybody about the coronavirus, tweet them to us now at Squawk CNBC is where you can do it. Then at 6:50, Dr. Scott Gottlieb will join us on set to answer some of ours and your questions.
Meantime, President Trump set to unveil his $4.8 trillion budget proposal aiming to slash social programs and roll out more tax cuts. And Elon Musk is in Washington this morning, and she's got the latest details on that. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Andrew. Well, the White House budget includes dramatic spending cuts and rosy economic forecasts, but it still won't be able to eliminate the nation's trillion-dollar deficit for another 15 years. Now, the budget will officially be released today, and it calls for $4.4 trillion in spending reductions over the next decade. Roughly half of those come from changes to social safety net programs like SNAP, Medicaid, and housing assistance. The other half comes from a 5% reduction in discretionary spending. Now, that is less than the amount in the deal that the White House had struck with lawmakers last year, and already the administration is facing political blowback. Congressman John Yarmuth, the Democratic chairman of the House Budget Committee, said that, quote, Congress will stand firm against this president's broken promises and his disregard for the human cost of his destructive policies. Now, the White House is also forecasting an average of 3% GDP growth over the next 15 years. And guys, there are no new economic proposals in this budget, but there is a $1.4 trillion placeholder for tax cuts 2.0. Back over to you.
We'll have to see what this all means. Elon, thank you for that. We're going to have a lot more on the budget in the 8 o'clock hour with acting OMB Director Russell Vogt.
And history was made at the Oscars last night because I actually saw about an hour of it before I retired, actually. I want to tell you about this because then I'm going to make it all about me again. But let me start with this. South Korea's Parasite took top honors for Best Picture. It's the first time a non-English film claimed the award. Parasite also won Best Director, Original Screenplay, and International Film. And I would just say this, that I was unable to do DraftKings out in California. Okay, so when I got back...
You started betting on the Oscars.
I bet on the Oscars with my son's advice. I was unable to figure out a parlay. He wanted me to do Best Original Screenplay, and he wanted me to do JoJo. Everything he told me to do, including my bet on Parasite for Best Picture, Andrew.
He won.
3-1. 3-1 odds. Guess what? If you bet $25 on Brad Pitt winning Best Supporting Actor, guess how much you won? $25.75. That was not a good bet. It was a good bet, but it's not worth it, obviously. But I did win 3-1. He got every single thing right.
Now you're going to get into the Oscars, the Emmys, and all these awards.
If you can bet on it, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to get it. I'll even put up with the insipid speeches that come out about cow insemination and whatever. Anyway, and I have some comments about this. Netflix went into the night with the most nominations with 24, but won just 2 trophies. Laura Dern won for Netflix's Marriage Story, and then American Factory won Best Documentary. That has something to do with the Obamas. I guess they produced it.
They produced the film. It was it was actually a very good film. It's fascinating.
Right. Disney, Sony, and South Korea's CJ Entertainment each won 4 trophies, and I was talking to Mike about this. So I saw The Irishman in the theaters.
Yes.
And I wanted to see those 4 guys. I was excited about it. And I liked it for 3.5 hours, okay? And I liked it. I thought it was good. Now it's on Netflix, and I said, you know what? It's a Saturday. I think I'm going to watch The Irishman again. So I was watching it. And I watched about a half hour of it, and I said, you know what? I can't do this. So
it's a tough commitment. Yeah, I'm in the same boat because I saw it in the theater.
So it came with a lot of fanfare. It's going to win everything. It's going to be best. And by the time we got to the Oscars, it's like it wasn't even in the running for Best Picture. It was 1917, Parasite, and everything. And nothing.
It's as long as a football game,
right?
And people watch nothing more than they watch.
And I knew nothing was going to happen. Even when I wait till the end, because I'd already seen it.
By the way, we say it's bad for Netflix, but I know we're going to talk about this, but it's actually also on a net basis, all the big U.S. studios, got blanked because Parasite was not produced here or distributed.
Did you see Parasite?
I have not seen it.
I have seen it. It is like bonkers. It is, but while you were watching it, didn't you think I didn't expect this?
Absolutely.
And this is crazy 100%. And violent and knives. And I'm not going to, but it's nutso.
Yep.
But I'm not crying for Netflix.
No, not at all.
Don't cry for Argentina.
Don't cry for Netflix. They're
Nobody
doing
is.
just fine.
I think it's just
no, I
a
am.
little bit of a lesson.
People are still holding it against them, though.
The people are less interested, fortunately or unfortunately, in the Oscars than they've ever been in their whole life, right? You'll see. We'll see what the ratings come in.
It might have something to do with a bunch of high school dropouts lecturing us on crap they know nothing about. Might be one of the problems. Anyway,
I think it's about the movies. Anyway, let's check out this ad, though, that aired during last night's Oscars. It's the first look at Samsung's new foldable smartphone, and it's rumored to be called the Galaxy Z Flip. It appears to have a small screen on the exterior for things like notifications and a dual-lens camera system. Samsung expected to reveal more details at a product event tomorrow. It even has, I don't know if you saw the little writing about the fold, because there will always be a crease in the glass, which is not a problem, they say, but if you remember, was a problem for the flip phone, the flip tablet that they used to have. Meantime, a lot more on Squawk coming up this morning. We got L Brands nearing a deal to sell its flagship Victoria's Secret brand. We'll talk that story right after the break. And then our big interview of the morning, it's coming up at 8 a.m. It's an exclusive with WeWork Executive Chairman Marcelo Clare. It's his first interview since all the big headlines about WeWork and SoftBank. We'll talk to him at 8 a.m. Back in a moment.
Do you have questions about the coronavirus outbreak, but don't know who to ask? Tweet them to us right now at Squawk CNBC. And Dr. Scott Gottlieb will answer them later this hour. This CNBC program is sponsored by Baird, a strong financial partner for 100 years.
CNBC celebrates the innovators, the risk takers, the groundbreakers, the deal makers. We encourage you to keep doing your thing because the world is watching. CNBC celebrates Black History Month.
The UK has now left the EU, and we're in a transition period until the end of the year. Throughout this period, the government will be forging new partnerships with the EU and the rest of the world. This could lead to new arrangements for trade, travel, and business. To find out about the changes and how they might affect you, go to gov.uk/transition.
The Mona Lisa is only 30 inches tall. The world's hottest chili? 1 inch. And Napoleon? Taller than a Great Dane, but only by 71 centimetres. Who says small can't make an impact? The Peugeot 108 Allure is now available for just $159 per month, with $159 initial rental. Our small but mighty car that doesn't have to cost you a small fortune. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease, 48 months at $159, 18 plus, guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions apply. You will not own the car.
Squawk Box L Brands nearing a deal to sell its Victoria's Secret brand to private equity firm Sycamore Partners. People familiar with the deal telling CNBC could be announced as soon as this week. No word yet on what leadership role L Brand CEO Les Wexner would have in such a deal. Wexner has been under mounting pressure due to his ties, of course, with Jeffrey Epstein. He's been accused of creating a culture of misogyny at Victoria's Secret, particularly that New York Times piece published last week called Angels in Hell. He's also been criticized for the poor performance of the company's flagship brand and really the transition or their miss on the transition in terms of what would be appealing to their audience, and they're going through that transition right now. What do you think? Can Victoria's Secret ever be Victoria's Secret of yore? Not necessarily in terms of the image, but in terms of the sales.
Well, just by definition.
So massively, it just was not. The execution was terrible at the company.
Just talking about the bigger point about whether it's misogynistic. I mean, by definition, is objectification and everything else. It's a different world, and you go back to the whole history of Victoria's Secrets, and it just looks like it doesn't fit in 2020. Well,
but
whether it's misogynistic.
But it was so mismanaged.
But same with, no, the stock is a different story, but Miss Universe and everything else we look at with a different sort of a viewpoint at this point.
And I understand that, but as an investor, there's a lot of money to be made
well, let's talk about that. Our guest host, Stephanie Link, you own the shares of L Brands. Where'd you buy it?
I actually bought it a couple of weeks ago, so I didn't get it at the lows. But remember, this stock was a $100 stock in 2015. It was $61 at the beginning of 2018. So it has lost a major amount of value because it has been mismanaged. I bought it because I thought there were a couple of ways that you could win. Either the management executes better, or you have an activist in there, Barrington. They would stir up the pot a little bit. They could do asset sales. They could split up this company. I have a sum of the parts analysis that gets this to $32. So from here, I think you can still make money. But they can do better in terms of inventory management and cost controls. There's a lot of things that they can do that will have this stock win over the long term.
Don't you think there's a perception that's like a Blockbuster or GameStop, or it's like anachronistic? It's in a business. I mean, are you still going to buy things like that? Maybe you will. Maybe
if they sell Victoria's Secret, they've got Bath and Body Works, and that's been the gem of the story for the last couple of years.
Do they need to get a decent price for Victoria's Secrets?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I could, as I said, some of the parts I could get you, 3 times EBITDA. And that gets you a $32 stock.
Which is super cheap, yeah. I guess my question, too, is Bath & Body Works, it's now at a scale where it could be a standalone public company.
Yes.
But will it be, do you think? Do you think that'll survive as a public instrument?
I think it could. I mean, they've done a really good job in terms of product innovation, and this is the area that they actually have executed, but there's still more that they can do, right? And as I say, there's a lot in terms of inventory management and cost control, supply chain, that kind of thing, that they can really help grow the earnings. And again, you have the products, you have the top line.
You've been to we've never gone there, right? To a Bath and Body Works.
Not in a very long time, no.
No, but I mean, can you get everything there? They have it at Bed Bath & Beyond. Is it different? Then we hang out. It's totally different.
Totally different.
So we should check it out.
You should check it out.
On a rainy Saturday.
They have good candles, I think.
There are a lot of candles.
A lot of candles.
A lot of skincare, creams,
stuff
that kind of thing.
Oh, I like that stuff, yeah.
You know, I mean, the Gen Z, they like that. I got to tell you, well, you have all these candles all over the place in my house.
We need candles and moisturizer.
Gen Z.
Yes.
Which ones are they? They don't even.
They're teenagers now.
They don't even. We're the ones that need skin cream. What do they need?
Actually, it is a big paradox.
Nice.
They're doing facials and everything else.
Oh, that's all that they do, right? And they don't care so much about cosmetics. They care more about skincare, which is why Estee Lauder just posted a 28% growth rate.
We do care about cosmetics around here. Youth is wasted on the young. Did you ever hear that?
I've heard it.
You've heard me say it.
Yes, you have. Looking at me.
Yeah, not bitter. Stephanie, thank you. L Brands, it is cheap. All right, coming up, we're going to talk to the reporter who made the call that SoftBank was right for an activist investor before Elliott phoned home management, before that stake was made public. That's next.
What gives me confidence about investment decisions? Rigorous fundamental research, with portfolio managers focused on the long term, who look beyond the spreadsheets to understand companies, from break room to boardroom, who know the only way to get a 360 view is to go around the world to get it. Can I rely on deep research to help make quality investment decisions? With Capital Group, I can. Talk to your advisor or consultant for investment risks and information.
There are plenty of road closures you're going to want to know about if you're planning to hit the slopes today. And we're just getting word from the highway. Parking lot. There's just no movement at all down there.
Land Rover, above and beyond.
Our retirement plan with Voya gives us confidence.
So we can spend a bit today knowing we're prepared for tomorrow.
Wow. Do you think you overdid it, maybe?
Overdid what?
Well planned, well invested, well protected.
Voya. Be confident to and through retirement.
Statement necklace? Or let your neck make the statement.
Gold Bond Neck and Chest firms and repairs depleted skin, and new Neck and Chest Age Defense with SPF helps protect from visible signs of premature aging. Gold Bond, Ultimate Lotion, Ultimate Skin.
However you take your business card, make the most of it with more shapes, stocks, and finishes from Vistaprint. And now get free shipping on all business cards, any style, any quantity, with promo code VCNOW. Own the now with Vistaprint.
Interactive Brokers charges 3.06% for a $100,000 margin loan. Do you know how much your broker charges? Upwards from 7.82% at Fidelity or Schwab to as high as 8.5 to 8.75% at Ameritrade or E-Trade. Move your account to Interactive Brokers and save at least $4,700 or much more if you're trading big bucks.
Facing them at the same time.
Global economies feeling the spread of coronavirus fears. How could a slowdown in China impact U.S. markets? The moves investors should consider. Squawk on the Street, today, 9 a.m. Eastern. Watch and listen live on the CNBC app.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. 2 months before Elliott Management announced a $2.5 billion stake in SoftBank, a Reuters reporter penned this piece. Wanted bold activist to take on Masa's son. He suggested an activist investor with plenty of cash and the stomach for a fight, like Dan Loeb's Third Point or Paul Singer's Elliott Management, could be in for the trade of a lifetime. Joining us now is that very reporter who called for all of this and called it right. Liam Proud has every reason to be proud this morning. Reporter for Reuters Breaking View. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Angie. Thank you very much.
So walk us through your thinking, and I'm perhaps even more curious about after you penned the piece whether you got a call from anybody at Elliott.
Well, basically, there's two reasons I thought this was likely to happen. The first is governance. This company, SoftBank, is run essentially by one person, Masayoshi Son. He's got a big stake in the company. He tends to make investment decisions based on his kind of gut instinct. He talked about liking to feel the force, like some kind of Jedi in Star Wars. And that's not typically the kind of thing that an activist likes to see. You like to see kind of accountability and a kind of broad suite of opinions been taken in. And then the other thing was just the valuation. You look at this thing, it's worth somewhere between $200 billion, $300 billion, depending on how you count it, but the stock market thinks it's worth $90 billion.
So, did anybody at Elliott call you after you wrote this piece?
I'm not supposed to talk about who I've spoken to on various kind of, on record, off record, but we're constantly in conversation with sources around this.
Sounds like somebody did call him. So walk us through, what do you think happens next in terms of the process, if there is one, and what really can happen here?
So I think the process has already started. I mean, my information is that they've been having conversations for some months before this came public, and that they've actually been quite friendly conversations. I mean, if you look at the two things that Elliott is calling for, it's a big stock buyback. Masterson has done that in the past. He did about a $5.5 billion buyback last year, and some governance changes, which don't involve him giving up that much power. It's basically just being a bit more clear, a bit more transparent with the stuff in the Vision Fund. How are you valuing that stuff? How did you get to those conclusions? And I think you could probably come to an agreement on those basic principles.
Liam, let's talk about the Vision Fund, and actually let's talk about the second Vision Fund, because there are new reports out that that fund is more troubled than ever, may even come in at half the price that they were even looking for, and that most of that money would come from SoftBank.
Yeah, I think that seemed likely for a while now. I mean, you know, they put out this statement around the middle of last year saying they were looking for a $108 billion sequel to the first Vision Fund. But the details around how they were going to get there were pretty scarce. I mean, we tried to run the numbers a few times based on, you know, they've named this bank, how much could they afford to give up, and we couldn't get anywhere near the big numbers. So it's not altogether surprising, but it doesn't make it any less embarrassing that they don't seem like they're going to close that scale of fund.
And what's the relationship right now between Masterson and MBS in Saudi Arabia, given that that is so much of the money?
Yeah, I mean, that's the crucial question, but it's very hard to tell. I mean, you can speak to people around both companies and get an idea of how they're thinking about it. But I mean, basically, this is two very powerful guys. I mean, you can say, you know, lots of reports come out saying people close to the public investment fund, the Saudi fund, you know, that they're minded not to invest again. But ultimately, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, could just turn around and change that on a dime if he wanted to. I mean, this is the kind of power these people have. So it's very hard to get a read unless you're in the room with those two people. We got to go. But do you think that founders and other startups are going to still take SoftBank money? And the reason I ask is, I don't know if you saw over the weekend, but Chamath Palihapitiya went on a Twitter tear after the story in the Wall Street Journal about the Mormon church money, which had been secretly created. Actually, he thinks that founders are basically going to have a whole sort of new morality about money and about who they're taking the money from and why they're taking the money. And we've started this conversation it started with the Saudis, frankly, but it felt sort of like we're sort of at a tipping point where this might actually move somewhere. I think they'll be okay. I mean, one, it doesn't look like they've got any more Saudi money at the moment, and they've spent most of the Saudi money already. So to the extent that was going to be a problem, it might be less of a problem. But, I mean, second of all, they've got the biggest fund in the world. I mean, if you're a startup founder and you think this is going to be a kind of winner-takes-all market that you're in, you know, if you have more money, you can outspend your competitors. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's their edge. So as long as they've got loads of cash, they should be able to find targets, I think. Hey, Liam, thank you. Appreciate it. Also, programming note. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you. We're going to talk to the COO of SoftBank and the executive chairman at WeWork, Marcelo Clare, is going to join us exclusively in an interview at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. It's the first time he's talked in a very long time about all of the things taking place at WeWork and, of course, at SoftBank. So looking forward to that. Coming up, get ready for the week ahead on Wall Street. We're going to have your Squawk Planner right after this break.
Do you have questions about the coronavirus outbreak, but don't know who to ask? Tweet them to us right now at Squawk CNBC. And Dr. Scott Gottlieb will answer them later this hour. Executive Edge is sponsored by AT&T Business with edge-to-edge intelligence covering virtually every part of your growing business. Learn more at att.com/edge-to-edge.
Through the AT&T network, edge-to-edge intelligence gives you the power to see every corner of your growing business. From managing inventory to detecting and preventing threats, to scaling up your production, giving you a nice big edge over your competition. That's the power of edge-to-edge intelligence.
It's tough to quit smoking cold turkey. So Chantix can help you quit slow turkey. Along with support, Chantix is proven to help you quit. With Chantix, you can keep smoking at first and ease into quitting. Chantix reduces the urge, so when the day arrives, you'll be more ready to kiss cigarettes goodbye. When you try to quit smoking, with or without Chantix. You may have nicotine withdrawal symptoms. Stop Chantix and get help right away if you have changes in behavior or thinking, aggression, hostility, depressed mood, suicidal thoughts or actions, seizures, new or worse heart or blood vessel problems, sleepwalking, or life-threatening allergic and skin reactions. Decrease alcohol use. Use caution driving or operating machinery. Tell your doctor if you've had mental health problems. The most common side effect is nausea. Quit smoking. Slow turkey. Talk to your doctor about Chantix.
CNBC's elite list of disruptive innovators is back.
We're trying to build the Amazon Prime of rental.
Here's your chance to rank among CNBC's Disruptor 50. Go to cnbc.com/disruptors and nominate your company today.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary?
So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container. And then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Good morning. Welcome back to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. Take a look at U.S. equity futures at this hour. We're off about 10 points on the Dow, but NASDAQ looking to open higher, about 12 points higher. S&P 500 looking to open just marginally higher as well. Joe.
All right, time now for this week's Squawk Planner. Tomorrow, Fed Chair Jay Powell. Do we really need this, honestly? 2 more days of this? Congressional testimony? What are you going to say now? God, just let the economy run, would you? Anyway, I'm not going to comment on that. But he will be talking for 2 days, and we're going to cover it, right? Do we
it's
have
the
to?
law.
Okay.
You know,
right.
It is the law.
Fine, Santoli. That's not the answer I wanted, but if we must, we must. And then on Thursday, we're going to get the latest read on inflation from the Consumer Price Index. And on Friday, we're going to get a look at retail sales for the month of January. Everybody that is in a cab in New York already knows this.
What's that?
About the gasoline prices.
I paid...
Because I already did the cab read where I've already said this.
Okay.
I know what I'm going to say. So, that the average price of gasoline fell 7 cents.
Yeah, but I was going to say...
for your minivan.
I paid $2.99 yesterday.
Did you drive like 20 miles to get to $2.99? That's because that's self-defense. I've done that.
No, it was a lot.
It was a lot. I thought it was cheap.
You think $2.99 is cheap compared to the average? No, but the average...
That's the national average.
I know, but you think in New York $2.99 is a good deal?
Yes.
I was saying to my wife, do you think this is a good deal? Because it was on the highway. And sometimes I think on the highway they were able to rip you off because there's nowhere to go except on the highway.
Don't you get 93 octane for that Silhouette? You got that old? Is it an Oldsmobile Silhouette? What do you have? You're like Danny DeVito, right? That's the Cadillac of minivans.
We don't have a minivan. We have a Highlander.
I know you do.
I know what you think is like a minivan. However, I want you to know the Sorkin family is going to get, I think.
I heard, yeah.
The Chrysler Pacifica.
I know.
And I want you to know, they just came out with a new one. They announced one last week.
How do you even know what that is?
It has all-wheel drive. Yeah. It just came out.
Vacuum cleaner?
Has a vacuum cleaner in it. And it has moonroofs and all sorts of cool stuff. A new 10-inch screen in the front.
Do you care what color it is?
We're so thrilled about getting
Do they have a hybrid or an electric?
They do make a hybrid, but I don't know if they make a hybrid with the all-wheel drive. And it's the all-wheel drive is the new piece of it, which is what we were waiting for. Because in the snow, East Coast, that kind of thing.
I mean,
up in Connecticut, when
unless you get a hybrid, you can't you can't get that bumper sticker that says "I'm better than you and you."
But by the way, that is a minivan. There's no splitting.
I know, but